Chapter 8:17. Heartless Palace? The number one force under the Palace of Immortals? Yu Qianzhou's gaze swept over the two people in front of him. He had a feeling that their conversation was purposely directed at him, but he had no idea what they were talking about. Coincidentally, Huang Xiaolong's gaze met with the yellow-clothed young man. The latter nodded with a faint smile, expressing his goodwill. "This father doesn't know you, what are you smiling for?" Yu Qianzhou turned around coldly, continuing to stare at the depression below. The yellow-clothed young man smiled nonchalantly. "This woman is really stubborn, she would rather die than comply. I'm afraid Che Mingqian is gnashing his teeth in anger right now." "Stubborn?" The red-clothed young man snorted disdainfully. "In the end, only death awaits you. Che Mingqian won't let this matter rest." The Che Mingqian they were talking about was the leader of the group of blue-clothed men, the one who had threatened Shui Mingqing in the valley. At this time, Che Mingqian was gnashing his teeth in anger. He didn't expect to run into two people like this who would rather die together than hand over the treasure in their hands. Yu Qianzhou's gaze fell onto the fist-sized golden object in Mu Tianjiao's hand. Recalling the records in the treasure encyclopedia, he immediately remembered what it was. This object was called Golden Fulling, and according to the encyclopedia's records, it was a treasure that could increase the success rate of alchemy, greatly reducing the chance of a failed pill. Many people would add a certain amount of this when refining top-grade immortal pills. This was because the loss would be rather shocking if a defective pill appeared in a top-grade immortal pill. Golden Fulling's market price was not calculated by the piece, but by the tail. Generally, one tail was worth 100 million divine-grade spirit stones. The Golden Fulling in Mu Tianjiao's hand was at least 4 to 5 tails. In other words, it was worth 4 to 500 million divine-grade spirit stones. "You better persuade her, my patience has a limit. The earlier you hand it over, I'll let you off. If you're too late, none of you will leave this place alive." Che Mingqian sneered. Of the 20 or so people hired by the Four Links Chamber of Commerce, only 13 were left after several battles. Everyone naturally knew how powerful the Heartless Palace was, and they were no match for them at all. Terrified, they all looked at Mu Tianjiao. Mu Tianjiao's beautiful hair was disheveled as she looked at everyone with a miserable expression. She smiled bitterly and said, "Don't believe his nonsense. As long as the item is still in my hands, they won't dare to do anything to us. I, Mu Tianjiao, guarantee once again that if they dare to harm any one of us, I will immediately turn this gold fulling into powder, and no one will be able to obtain it." At this time, Tao Zhong, who was guarding Mu Tianjiao, also loudly warned everyone, "Don't believe his nonsense. Even if we hand over the item, he won't let us go. As long as we still have the item, we have a chance to live." Mu Tianjiao immediately gave him a grateful look. They hadn't found anything valuable along the way and had even lost a few men. This piece of golden fulling was discovered by chance under the roots of a tree. It was also the most valuable item they had so far. As long as they brought it back, the Four Links Chamber of Commerce would be able to hold on. With her personality, how could she give up this opportunity so easily? Che Mingqian sneered and said, "Stubborn dead duck. I'll give you one last chance. If you miss it, only death awaits you." What a big tone. I want to see who will be the one to die. A cold snort echoed in the surroundings as a figure appeared in the concave in an instant. When Mu Tianjiao and the others saw who it was, they exclaimed in unison, "Yu Qianzhou." They all suspected that Yu Qianzhou was already dead after running around alone. They didn't expect to see him again at this critical moment. Yu Qianzhou's cold eyes looked at Che Mingqian and the others. Che Mingqian turned pale with fright and said, "It's you." More than a dozen men in blue subconsciously moved 10 meters away. The reaction of Che Mingqian and the others made the yellow-clothed man and red-clothed man look at each other in surprise. The surrounding people also looked at each other in dismay. They didn't know who this person was to make the disciples of Heartless Palace so afraid. Che Mingqian said angrily, "Who are you? Why do you keep going against my Heartless Palace? Do you really think my Heartless Palace is easy to bully?" If there was no one around, he would have called his fellow disciples and run away. However, under the watchful eyes of so many people, the Passionless Palace couldn't lose face as the number one sect in the immortal world. "What a joke. I'm not that bored." Yu Qianzhou said indifferently, "Four Links Chamber of Commerce is my employer. You snatch things from me. Who do you think is going against who? I didn't expect Heartless Palace to be so arrogant to the point of lying." As he spoke, his aura had already locked onto the disciples of Heartless Palace. Only now did Che Mingqian realize that Mu Tianjiao and the others had cried out the name Yu Qianzhou. Clearly, as the other party said, they were indeed in cahoots. Che Mingqian was speechless. Why was he so unlucky? He suddenly felt an aura locking onto him. This was clearly a sign of a fight. What was the difference between talking nonsense and seeking death? Without turning his head, he shouted, "Go!" The group of Heartless Palace disciples had just teleported away when they saw Yu Qianqiu snort coldly, trying to run? He opened his arms at the same time, and the surrounding air suddenly exploded with a dozen balls of white smoke. Dense streams of light flashed out of Yu Qianqiu's sleeves and quickly drilled into a dozen or so clouds of white smoke. After flashing for a while, they quickly returned and drilled back into his sleeves. The air was filled with smoke and the dozen storage bags fell to the ground with a thud. Yu Qianqiu said indifferently to the people of Four Links Chamber of Commerce who were dumbfounded, "No wonder Heartless Palace specializes in robberies. It's easy to get things. I think it's worth learning from them." With that said, he raised his hand and took the scattered storage bags into his hand, then put them away. The sounds of fighting could still be heard faintly in the distance, but this part of the world seemed abnormally quiet. Shock was written all over the faces of the people on the surrounding hillsides. Killing more than a dozen soul formation cultivators in an instant while teleporting away was definitely not something an immortal expert with a lower cultivation base could do. The people of Four Links Chamber of Commerce looked at Yu Qianqiu speechlessly, especially Mu Tianjiao. She now deeply suspected that Yu Qianqiu was not a soul formation cultivator at all. Such a miraculous method was definitely an immortal cultivator, and he must have used some sort of method to sneak in. After Mu Tianjiao recovered from her daze, joy surged in her eyes. With the help of such an expert, she would definitely be able to get what she wanted on this trip to the Divine Ruin Realm. She hurriedly bowed and said, "Thank you." As for whether Yu Qianqiu handed over the things he obtained, it was no longer important. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said with a smile, "You are my employer, this is my duty." As he spoke, his cold gaze swept across the surrounding spectators, full of warning. Immediately, many people quietly led their teams and left, knowing that this was no longer something they could do. However, they all secretly remembered the name Yu Qianqiu in their hearts. There were still two teams that had not left. The yellow-clothed man and the red-clothed man on the hillside looked at each other, nodded slightly and floated over together. Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes and looked over. The red-clothed man cupped his fists and said, "I am a disciple of Mythical Fire Palace, Hui Yunlong. I am a disciple of Spirit Cultivation Sect, Du Feng." The yellow-clothed man cupped his fists, glanced at Mu Tianjiao and the others and said with a smile, "Other than their own people, the Immortal Palace will definitely not let an immortal expert in. Since you were able to enter the Divine Ruin Realm, your cultivation base must not have reached the Immortal Realm, but your ability is indeed admirable." Yu Qianqiu glanced at Tao Zhong and asked telepathically, "What kind of sects are the Mythical Fire Palace and Spirit Cultivation Sect?" Tao Zhong was speechless. He really could not imagine how such a capable person did not even know the most basic common sense. However, he did not dare to be disrespectful and immediately replied telepathically, "The immortal world has the top 50 large sects, as well as the top 50 rich families or merchant associations. The Mythical Fire Palace and Spirit Cultivation Sect are both within the top 50 large sections. Although they are not comparable to the Heartless Palace, they are very powerful." Yu Qianqiu replied with an "Oh," and said, "I am Yu Qianqiu, what can I do for the two of you?" As he spoke, he could not help but look at Hui Yunlong. This was called not noticing, but once he paid attention he would be shocked. He discovered that this guy had a head of red hair, especially his appearance and burly figure. He was simply printed from the same mold as the Nanming old ancestor. The only difference was that one had a beard and was a little older. If the two of them were placed together, people would definitely mistake them for father and son. If the spirit-severing experts from the various countries saw this later, who knew what their reaction would be? Du Feng smiled faintly and said, "The Heartless Palace is a vengeful sect. Of course, with Brother Yu's ability, there is naturally no need to be afraid of the disciples of the Heartless Palace in the Divine Ruin Realm. I wonder which famous family Brother Yu comes from? Why have I never seen Brother Yu before?" The hidden meaning in these words was very obvious. It was to tell Yu Qianqiu that the news of him slaughtering the disciples of the Heartless Palace would inevitably spread. As long as the news spread, without the protection of a famous family, the people of the Heartless Palace would definitely deal with him. I am just an unknown wandering cultivator. How would I be related to any famous family? It is normal that you have not seen me before. Yu Qianqiu said. Hui Yunlong and Du Feng looked at each other, and a strange look flashed in their eyes. Du Feng smiled and said, "There are many heroes in the wilderness. Brother Yu, there is no need to belittle yourself. Moreover, how many of the founders of famous families are not wandering cultivators? Let's take the 12 great immortal monarchs in the celestial world for example. There should be 13 great immortal monarchs now. Which one of them isn't a wandering cultivator? That is why it is said that there are crouching tigers and hidden dragons among the wandering cultivators. There are often some wandering cultivators who amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. 13 great immortal monarchs? Yu Qianqiu frowned and muttered with a puzzled expression. Brother, you might not know this, but there are currently not many people who know this news. Du Feng smiled and explained, after the battle with the myriad swords demon lord, because a few immortal monarchs had fallen, a few immortal monarchs became vacant. Later on, the celestial emperor promoted a few powerful figures from the celestial world to fill the 12 immortal monarchs. Who knew that after all these years, immortal monarch Jianghu, whom everyone thought had fallen, would return from the human world. However, it was not good to dismiss the other immortal monarchs, so there were the 13 great immortal monarchs now. Chapter 8:18. His explanation was within Yu Qianqiu's expectations, but he had misunderstood Yu Qianqiu's meaning. Yu Qianqiu asked himself, why not the 14 immortal monarchs? Since the silver ball given to immortal monarch crocodile was already in the immortal world, then immortal monarch crocodile must have also returned to the immortal world. I heard that immortal monarch crocodile came back with immortal monarch Wuxia? Did I hear wrongly? Yu Qianqiu slowly asked without batting an eyelid. Hui Yunlong and Du Feng looked at each other in surprise. They did not expect an itinerant cultivator to know such a secret. Tao Zhong's eyes flickered. He was even more certain that Yu Qianqiu was a rich second generation. Otherwise, how could an ordinary person hear such high-level news? Du Feng sighed. Immortal monarch crocodile was one of the top figures in the immortal world back then. Who knew that after he came back with immortal monarch Wuxia, his cultivation level had fallen to the exalted immortal late stage by the myriad swords demon lord. With his current cultivation level, he is no longer qualified to be an immortal monarch. If not for immortal monarch Wuxia's protection, he would have lost his life this time. Oh! Yu Qianqiu's eyes flashed and his heart surged. However, he still wore a doubtful expression and asked, no matter what, he was one of the 12 great immortal monarchs back then. Could it be that someone wants to kill him? Du Feng looked at Hui Yunlong. The latter paused, then said slowly, the immortal monarch that the immortal emperor promoted was his old enemy. Not only did this enemy occupy immortal monarch crocodile's immortal crocodile palace, but he also slaughtered immortal monarch crocodile's trusted aides. I heard that because of this, immortal monarch crocodile could not hold back his anger and spoke rudely in the palace. He talked back to the immortal emperor on the spot and was seriously injured. If not for immortal monarch Wuxia's protection, I'm afraid immortal monarch crocodile would have lost his life. I see. Yu Qianqiu nodded slowly, his expression slightly solemn. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Old monster, you yourself once said that there's no place for you in the immortal world. Why are you asking for trouble? However, he could understand immortal Lord Crocodile's feelings. Immortal Lord Crocodile had spent so much effort to return to the celestial world because he was confident. Perhaps he wanted to find his trusted subordinates and make a comeback. Who knew that when he returned, he would find that everything had changed. Not only had his trusted subordinates been killed by his enemies, but even his territory had been occupied by them. The most unbearable thing was that all of this was tacitly allowed by the immortal emperor that he was loyal to all those years ago. This was tantamount to breaking his last trace of hope, so how could he swallow this? It was understandable that he was impulsive. The level of the conversation between the three was too high, so Mu Tianjiao and the others had no right to interrupt. They could only listen quietly from the side. Besides, this kind of high-level grudge was not something they could usually hear. In that case, immortal Lord Crocodile, who was severely injured by the immortal emperor, has been taken away by immortal Lord Wuxia? Yu Qianqiu asked again. It should be. Hui Yunlong nodded. Du Feng's eyebrows twitched slightly. He found that Yu Qianqiu seemed to be very concerned about immortal Lord Crocodile. He could not help but ask, Brother Yu, do you know immortal Lord Crocodile? Yu Qianqiu was startled. He said in surprise, how could I know him? I'm just a little impressed. It's the first time I've heard of someone daring to talk back to an immortal emperor. If there's a chance, I'd like to meet this audacious immortal Lord Crocodile. By the way, where is immortal Lord Wuxia who took away immortal Lord Crocodile? Du Feng smiled. Actually, immortal Lord Wuxia's original immortal palace has also been occupied by another immortal lord. Logically speaking, there has never been a 13th immortal lord in the celestial world since ancient times. Even if immortal Lord Wuji returns from the human world, it is unlikely that he will become an immortal lord again. But immortal Lord Wuji is a little special. At this point he stopped, but the smile on his face was somewhat ambiguous. Yu Qianqiu asked suspiciously, Immortal Lord Wuji is a little special? What's so special about her? Du Feng shook his head with a smile and said nothing more. Hui Yunlong on the other hand snorted. What can't be said? It's something that everyone knows. The celestial world is divided into 13 celestial prefectures. Other than the one that the immortal emperor presides over, the other 12 celestial prefectures are ruled by 12 immortal lords. Now there's a 13th immortal lord. Where are we going to divide the territory for Jiwu? Everyone knows that the immortal emperor once pursued Jiwu and wanted to make Jiwu the immortal empress, but Jiwu refused. If it weren't for this relationship, the immortal emperor wouldn't have shown mercy and let Jiwu save immortal Lord Crocodile. Damn. What big gossip. Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up. The immortal emperor likes Jiwu? When he remembered that he had touched the immortal emperor's woman, this feeling, Du Feng smiled bitterly and looked at Hui Yunlong, as if he was blaming him for speaking out of turn. Mu Qinjiao and the others were dumbfounded. No one knows whether he likes Jiwu or not, but there's definitely something going on. Hui Yunlong chuckled. This time there's a 13th immortal lord. Some people have already guessed that the immortal emperor wants to rule the same celestial prefecture as Jiwu. I believe that it won't be long before the matter of the immortal empress is brought up again. In fact, immortal Lord Jiwu herself is well aware of this and has already rejected the appointment of another immortal lord. But the immortal emperor insists, and immortal Lord Jiwu doesn't dare to offend the immortal emperor too much. Otherwise, no matter how big the celestial world is, there's no place for her to stand. Du Feng couldn't bear it anymore. He stopped him in a low voice. Hui Yunlong, these are all your guesses. Which eye of yours saw it? Be careful. Hui Yunlong said disdainfully, all the major sects and noble families have people in the celestial palace. Many people have seen this and I'm not the only one talking about it. Besides, no one has any disrespect for the immortal emperor. They're just exclaiming about immortal Lord Jiwu's charm. Brother, you don't listen to his nonsense. Du Feng changed the topic and smiled. I advise Brother Yu to give up on the idea of meeting immortal Lord Crocodile. Although he's down and out now, he has immortal Lord Jiwu's protection. He's not someone people like us can meet. Yu Qianqiu also knew that if he continued to talk about immortal Lord Crocodile, it would really arouse suspicion. He changed the topic and asked, the two of you must have an extraordinary status in the mythical fire palace and the spirit cultivation sect, right? As he spoke, there was a slight smile on his face as he glanced at the two groups of people standing on the hillside in an orderly manner. These people were completely different from the groups of people from the other sections. These two groups of people seemed to be the subordinates of Du Feng and Hui Yunlong. Without receiving orders, they did not dare to move. Clearly, they did not have the kind of relationship that disciples from the same sect would have. Without a doubt, these two people had extraordinary statuses. Du Feng shook his head and smiled bitterly. Our status is a little bit different. Both of us are blood relatives of our respective sect leaders. The sect leader is our ancestor. But you also know that there are countless blood relatives like us in the various sects, so there's really nothing strange about it. Yu Qianqiu softly said, oh. He could understand this. The immortal world was different from the human world. If there were no accidents, the old guys in the immortal world would be old men who wouldn't die. After countless years, they would probably have countless children and grandchildren. However, he couldn't help but look at the two teams of people on the hillside. He had a feeling that things weren't as simple as Du Feng said. Du Feng clearly saw through his doubts, so he waved his hand and said, Brother Yu, please don't misunderstand. Our fathers just happened to hold some positions in their respective sects, and these people are all disciples under our fathers. Brother Yu will naturally understand the reason when you have the chance in the future. Yu Qianqiu looked at the two of them and said with a smile, it can't be that the two of you are looking for me just to chat about family matters, right? Du Feng looked at Hui Yunlong and said with a hearty smile, the disciples of all the major sects in the ruins of God have gathered here. It has already become a place of trouble. Brother Yunlong and I were afraid that it wouldn't be safe, so we joined forces. I believe that there are many sects that are doing the same thing as us. As he said that, he swept his gaze across the people from the Four Links Chamber of Commerce. He stared at Yu Qianqiu and asked, I wonder if the Four Links Chamber of Commerce is interested in joining forces with us to search for treasures? The treasures obtained will be divided equally among the 3 sections. What does brother you think? I'm only being hired by the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce. I can't make the decision on this matter. I'm afraid. Yu Qianqiu stared at Mu Tianjiao. Before he could finish speaking, Mu Tianjiao took a step forward and bowed to him, saying, Mr. Yu, please make the decision. Mu Tianjiao will listen to Mr.'s instructions. She could be considered a smart person. She naturally knew that the reason why large sects like the Mythical Flame Palace and the Spirit Cultivation sect were willing to take the initiative to cooperate was definitely not because of her 4 Links Chamber of Commerce. A small chamber of commerce like the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce would probably not even be willing to look them in the eye. Furthermore, they wanted to give a huge benefit to the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce. It was nothing more than giving face to Yu Qianqiu. She naturally had to tactfully take the initiative to give up her authority. As long as she could tie down Yu Qianqiu, many problems would no longer be a problem. Du Feng and Hui Yunlong glanced at Mu Tianjiao and smiled at each other. They discovered that this woman was really a smart person. Yu Qianqiu stared at Mu Tianjiao and fell into a short silence. To be honest, he rather admired this woman and did not wish for anything to happen to her in this dangerous place. Besides, he also wanted to make friends with 2 large sections. After all, he was too unfamiliar with the immortal world and needed a starting point. He paused and said, Since that's the case, I'll make the decision on behalf of the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce. I hope that the Mythical Flame Palace and the Spirit Cultivation sect will take good care of the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce. Ah, brother Yu is indeed a straightforward person. Hui Yunlong laughed. Du Feng also laughed and said, Since it's a cooperation, everyone naturally has to take care of each other. Yu Qianqiu also followed the 2 of them and politely said. He understood in his heart that these 2 fellows would definitely not stick to him for no reason. They definitely had a purpose, but he did not point it out. He wanted to see what exactly these 2 fellows were plotting. After the 3 parties exchanged pleasantries, under Yu Qianqiu's decision, the 3 teams of people continued to head deeper into the Divine Ruin realm. Mu Tianjiao, who had increased her confidence, happily led her people to take the lead. Tao Zhong and the others who were hired also heaved a sigh of relief. Now that they had joined forces with the people from the 2 great sects, the risk of danger for everyone would be greatly reduced. Furthermore, there was an expert like Yu Qianqiu holding the line. Chapter 8:19. The disciples of the Mythical Fire Palace and the Spirit Cultivation sect advanced in a formation on the left and right of the 4 Links Merchant Guild. Yu Qianqiu, Du Feng and Hui Yunlong followed behind them. The dense spiritual qi formed a mist that drifted in all directions, and exotic flowers and plants could be seen everywhere. The surroundings seemed to be forever white, and the sun, moon and stars could not be seen. What surprised Yu Qianqiu the most was that he realized that there was no night here. No matter how much time had passed, it was always white. It made people feel like they were trapped in a nightmare that they couldn't break free from. It was so unreal. When he asked Du Feng and Hui Yunlong, the 2 of them were also confused about this strange phenomenon. It was said that ever since the day the Divine Ruins realm opened, the Divine Ruins realm had always been like this. Many people had the same doubts, but no one could figure out what was going on. On the way, Yu Qianqiu discovered that the major sects were truly major sections. Their deterrence was clearly not ordinary. Some of the people with ill intentions would immediately retreat when they saw the disciples of the Lifefire Palace and Spirit Cultivation sect taking a detour. This was not because the disciples of the 2 great sects had high cultivation bases. After all, the disciples of the various sects that entered the ruins of God had similar cultivation bases. The key was that they could not afford to provoke their backers. Otherwise, even if they gained an advantage in the ruins of God, it would bring disaster to their sects when they went out. The fighting and killing in the surroundings was endless. Tens of thousands of sects and hundreds of thousands of people were fighting with each other. It would be strange if they could live in peace. In short, it was those small sects that suffered from the calamity. They tried their best to hide and search for rare treasures, but they would always run into robbers who blocked their way. What he saw and heard along the way confirmed the saying that the weak were prey to the strong. The teams with weak backgrounds were angry, but they were forced to hide and flee. The teams with strong backgrounds were unscrupulously robbing the bright tribulations. Of course, the disciples of those big sects were not just for show. The sects behind them could stand tall in the immortal world without collapsing, so naturally they had the ability to show off. The techniques that the disciples cultivated must be unique, and this was also the capital for them to be arrogant. Yu Qianqiu sighed, but he laughed coldly in his heart. He wanted to go back and see how the 300 people he brought were doing. He wondered if they had gotten used to it. But after thinking about it, he dispelled this idea. Although those 300 people came from the human world of cultivation, none of them were easy to deal with. They were all people who struggled to survive in the narrow space of the human world. The disciples of the various sects in the immortal world with superior conditions couldn't compare to them. Those 300 people could be said to be the elites of the elites in the world. As long as they had a suitable cultivation base as a guarantee, they could be thrown anywhere in the immortal world and become an ambitious and ruthless person. The reason why he brought them here this time was to let them go through a period of adaptation from the human world to the immortal world, and eliminate their subconscious fear of the immortal world after living in the human world for a long time. As long as these people's mentality was right, they would be of great use in the immortal world in the future, and they would become his right-hand men. He needed to slowly control and grasp the process. In fact, Yu Qianzhou's initial plan was to wait for the Divine Ruin Realm to be opened for a month before bringing the Utopia army here to search for spirit herbs. However, there was a very practical worry that made him dispel this idea. Once the Divine Ruin Realm was closed, no one knew what the situation inside was like. Furthermore, every member of the Utopia army was only at the tribulation stage, so they couldn't afford to take too much risk. However, he was eager to obtain the immortal herbs that could make him rich. There was definitely a limit to one person's ability, so he set his sights on the soul formation stage lords of the various countries. These people had more experience than the members of the Utopia army. To put it bluntly, the Utopia army could be used as the core combat power, but it was not suitable for them to go out and fight alone. In addition, the Immortal Palace restricted the entry of the various sects, so the Divine Ruin Realm became the best place for the lords of the various countries to train. Mu Qianzhao had just led a group of people over a small hill when they saw a group of people vigilantly looking around. In the middle of the group, a few people were quickly digging out a white plant root that was as thick as an arm from under a rock. There were only 20 people in this group, and when they suddenly realized that a group of people had appeared on the hill and were staring at them, they immediately became nervous. After seeing that it was Mu Qianzhao who was leading the group, the person holding the white plant root was stunned. He quickly stuffed the thing into his storage bracelet, then chuckled and said, "Enemies always meet. I was looking everywhere for your 4 links Chamber of Commerce, but I didn't expect you to deliver yourself to me." This person was called Li Lanting, and he was none other than the leader of the 8 links Chamber of Commerce's team to enter the Divine Ruin Realm. Before entering, he had received a warning from the 8 links Chamber of Commerce's president, Qi Fengsheng. If they met anyone from the 4 links Chamber of Commerce, they were to kill them all. Mu Qianzhao was also stunned. She didn't expect to meet people from the 8 links Chamber of Commerce under such circumstances. Almost as soon as their gazes met, a fierce look flashed across Mu Qianzhao's pretty face. She waved the silver shield in her hand and decisively shouted, "Kill!" As soon as the words left her mouth, she rushed toward the other party without hesitation. Tao Zhong and the others were stunned. This group of people had always been hiding and keeping a low profile, and they had never taken the initiative to attack anyone. Mu Qianzhao had always been cautious, leading everyone on the edge of danger with fear and trepidation. They didn't expect that she would go crazy now. Everyone was stunned for a moment, but they immediately remembered that they had a powerful backer behind them. They immediately shot out and took the initiative to attack. The playful smile on Li Lanting's face froze, and he looked a little stunned. It was already good that he didn't settle the score with them, but the 4 links Chamber of Commerce actually took the initiative to come to their deaths when they were at a disadvantage. He immediately shouted with a ferocious expression, "Attack!" The 2 groups of people quickly and fiercely collided, pushing the battle to its climax. Although Mu Qianzhao's figure was petite and looked like a weak woman, she was like a completely different person when she was fierce. She stared at Li Lanting with no regard for her life, and with the silver shield protecting her body, she entangled Li Lanting and fought with all her might. In the end, it gave Li Lanting a fright, and she was almost unable to withstand the blows. She retreated as she dealt with them, shouting, "Stop her!" After all, the 8 links Chamber of Commerce had the advantage in numbers, and had a few more people than the 4 links Chamber of Commerce. Hearing Li Lanting's shout, a few people immediately dashed over to intercept Mu Qianzhao. Mu Qianzhao, who had been attacking wildly, immediately fell into a dangerous situation. Dealing with 4 people at the same time was already beyond her ability. Fortunately, she had 2 treasures in her hands. The silver shield for defense glowed with a silver light, and in the blink of an eye, it had already blocked several fatal attacks for her. Because of her fearless bravery, it immediately reduced the pressure on the other team members. Apart from her, who was fighting 1 against 4, the other team members were fighting 1-on-1. In such a critical situation, Mu Tianjiao should be thinking of a way to escape, but she raised her cultivation to the limit and fought with all her might under the siege of 4 men. She was actually far from being as strong as she appeared to be. Her heart was like her appearance, just a weak woman. She also wanted to live the life of the young miss of another family. But the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce was already in a precarious situation. Her father's character was weak, and it was not enough to support the overall situation. She believed that as an only daughter she had no way out. At this time she could only constantly strive for self-improvement. Hence, she shouldered the heavy burden without any hesitation, and decided to shield her father from the wind and rain. The attacks from the 4 people surrounding her were like a mountain. The web between Mu Tianjiao's thumb and forefinger had already split open from the impact, and fresh blood flowed out. But she still gritted her teeth with a pale face. She knew that Yu Qianqiu and the rest would see it soon, because they were not far from her team. She knew that at this time she had to become stronger. She could not let everyone look down on her. She had to hold on, and let everyone see that even though she was a woman, she did not lose to a man. She knew that if she wanted to gain the respect of others, she had to do things that would make others look at her in a different light. Otherwise, respect would not come even if one begged for it. She knew that this was an opportunity for the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce. Borrowing her relationship with Yu Qianqiu, if her contribution could gain the favor of the mythical Flame Palace and the Spirit Cultivation sect, and establish a certain relationship after the matter, even if it was just a little bit of cooperation, then the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce would be able to walk out of this dangerous situation. Her thinking was not wrong. In order to gain, there must be a price to pay. But for a woman like her to do such a thing, it was a little too heavy. That delicate shout of "kill" came from afar, and in addition to the intense sounds of fighting that followed, it immediately alerted Yu Qianqiu and the other 2. The 3 of them looked at each other and immediately flew up, directly to the hillside in front of them. Scanning the battlefield, the 3 of them immediately fixed their gazes on Mu Tianjiao, who was surrounded by 4 men. Mu Tianjiao's figure was originally petite, and at this moment, under the frenzied attacks of 4 men, she looked so helpless. Her resistance was already very messy, and it was obvious that she was barely holding on. But even so, she still fought to the death without retreating, and in the midst of her messy resistance, she did not forget to find time to counterattack. That unyielding aura caused Du Feng and Hui Yunlong to be slightly shocked. They saw something that was rare even in the immortal world, and that thing was called backbone. Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes as he stared below. He could already see the background of the other party from their clothing. He gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, 8 Links Chamber of Commerce again, they are really tired of living. The commotion of the battle naturally alerted the mythical Flame Palace and Spirit Cultivation sect disciples on both sides. 2 groups of people appeared from the left and right, and their gazes were fixed on their respective leaders. Du Feng and Hui Yunlong's eyes flashed with killing intent as they shouted in unison, "Kill!" The disciples of the 2 great sects rapidly formed an encirclement, and quickly joined the battle. The situation was instantly reversed. A few screams rang out. Li Lanting looked at the figures that were flashing in all directions and anxiously shouted, "Everyone please show mercy. We can discuss this as long as we have it, we can give it to you." Hui Yunlong's pair of fiery red eyebrows raised and he angrily said, "I want your life. Kill them all, don't leave a single one alive." As he gave the command, a red light erupted from below. The bodies of the Lifire Palace's disciples all released 2 balls of red fireballs that danced in the air. Chapter 820. As soon as the fist-sized fireballs appeared, they nimbly shot towards the disciples of the Bada Chamber of Commerce. Li Lanting exclaimed, "Mythical Fire Palace. Retreat. Don't touch it." Unfortunately, it was too late. Many of the Bada Chamber of Commerce's disciples subconsciously released their flying swords to block the fireball. Who knew that when the flying swords hit the fireball would immediately collapse into countless stars. The exploding sparks seemed to have a mind of their own as they drew lines of fire towards the attackers. The 8 Pagoda Chamber of Commerce disciple was shocked and immediately released his chi of vigor to defend himself. Who would have thought that the sparks would not be extinguished? They swarmed over and touched the chi of vigor, causing the fire to rise. In an instant, the person hiding in the chi of vigor was wrapped into a bright red fireball. There were also disciples of the Bada Chamber of Commerce who were trying to teleport away. However, the sparks that were scattered all around had already sealed off the surroundings. There was no space for them to teleport safely. Those disciples of the Bada Chamber of Commerce who had underestimated the power of the sparks immediately suffered a calamity. They crashed into the sparks that were densely woven like a net and were instantly ignited into flames. Ah! Several mournful screams rang out as the people on fire struggled in the air, trying to extinguish the flames on their bodies. However, these flames were extremely fierce. They were like maggots that could not be extinguished at all. They wrapped around their bodies and burned crazily. These people did not fly far before they saw rays of mysterious light shooting out from the hands of the spirit cultivation sect disciples, killing the people on fire who were trying to escape. After these flaming men fell to the ground with a thud, they struggled a little and then stopped moving. Piles of flames burned on the undulating hills around them, and a burnt smell filled the air. Yu Qianzhou's gaze fell on the hands of the spirit cultivation sect disciples. He saw that each of them was holding a long and narrow silver token in one hand. It was about 2 feet long, wide at the top and narrow at the bottom, and the wider it was, the thinner it was. The sharp end was like an iron pestle in one's hand, and the cloud pattern on the token was engraved with the word Spirit. The mysterious light that shot out from the hands of the spirit cultivation sect disciples was this item. This was the first time that Yu Qianzhou had seen someone use this as a magic treasure. At this moment, the spirit cultivation sect disciples suddenly shouted in unison, "Break!" The token in his hand had already transformed into a beam of light and shot out. Its sharp tip was like a steel needle that had punctured a balloon, easily piercing through the 8 Pagoda Chamber of Commerce's disciples' protective aura. As soon as the protective aura was broken, the raging flames immediately collapsed and converged, instantly attaching to the person inside and burning. Ah! Miserable screams rang out as the mystic light shot into the raging flames, easily piercing through them and immediately ending the ear-piercing screams. One by one, the burning men fell to the ground, emitting a disgusting burnt smell. The members of the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce stood there blankly. Once the 2 great sects made their move, they no longer had the chance to intervene. In the blink of an eye, the battle was over. Compared to their bitter struggle, the methods of the 2 sects were indeed much stronger. Yu Qianzhou's gaze landed on the burning corpses, revealing a thoughtful expression. He was previously shocked by the fire-controlling methods of the mythical Fire Palace disciples. Only later did he realize that there was something in the fireball that was released. It should be something similar to oil. It was not as he had thought, that they could use the same method to control the flames as he did. After it was over, Mu Qinjiao flew over with her messy hair. She bowed to Du Feng and Hui Yunlong. "Thank you for your help, otherwise I, Mu Qinjiao, would have lost my life here." "Miss Mu, you're too polite. We're allies, so it's only natural for us to help each other." Du Feng paused as he stared at Mu Qinjiao's bloody palm. He frowned and asked, "Is Miss Mu's hand all right?" Hui Yunlong, who was at the side, had already taken out a fragrant immortal pill and handed it over. "The effect of this immortal pill is not bad. It will be good for your injury if you consume it." This. Mu Qinjiao hesitated for a moment, but still accepted it with gratitude. She consumed it in front of everyone, not afraid of being poisoned. Hui Yunlong immediately laughed. "Miss Mu is a straightforward person." Yu Qianzhou's nose twitched slightly, as if he could faintly smell the fragrance of another immortal pill. He glanced to his side and happened to see that Du Feng was also holding an immortal pill in his hand. However, seeing that Hui Yunlong was already 1 step ahead of him, the immortal pill was gently grasped and hidden in his palm, no longer letting others see it. There was a faint and calm smile on his face. Yu Qianzhou raised his brows, looking left and right at the 2 fellows' gazes. He discovered that the way they looked at Mu Qinjiao seemed to be a little strange. They had lost the calmness from before, and there were a few hints of peculiarity in their eyes. The corners of Yu Qianzhou's mouth curled up, revealing a smile that he did not reveal. He then said with a solemn expression, "This 8 Pagoda Chamber of Commerce is really despicable. I didn't think that they would still be unwilling to let your 4 Pagoda Chamber of Commerce off even after reaching the Divine Ruin Realm. It seems like they won't be satisfied until they force you and your father to death. They're going too far." Mu Qinjiao bit her lip and said with grief and indignation, "They never wanted to let us go. When we were outside the Divine Ruin Realm, Shi Fengxing once came to the 4 Pagoda Chamber of Commerce's shop and threatened us. He said that he wanted me to be his woman in bed. If I didn't agree, we can forget about returning to the 4 Pagoda Chamber of Commerce safely." The gazes of the 2 men on the left and right turned cold at the same time. Du Feng frowned and said, "Shi Fengxing? Could he be the president of this 8 Pagoda Chamber of Commerce?" Mu Qinjiao bit her lip and nodded silently. Du Feng coldly snorted and said, "An unknown little chamber of commerce actually dares to be so arrogant. If there's a chance, I'd like to see it for myself." "Miss Mu, don't be afraid." Hui Yunlong patted his chest and said, "Leave this to me. Isn't it just a lousy chamber of commerce? When we get out of the Divine Ruin Realm, I'll help you kill that Qi Fengxing. He actually wants to find a woman in bed with him, that dog." Mu Qinjiao looked at him speechlessly. She did not know whether what he said was true or false, but she still bowed and thanked him. Hui Yunlong casually waved his hand and said, "Since we're allies, it's only right for me to help. No need to thank me, no need to thank me." Du Feng smiled faintly at the side, but that smile seemed a little unnatural. Yu Qianqiu silently observed the two of them and forced himself not to laugh. He finally confirmed his guess and then looked at Mu Qinjiao meaningfully. Although he did not know which of the two would become her protector in the end, he reckoned that the trouble with the 8 Pagoda Chamber of Commerce should be solved. There was no need for him to worry about this matter. "Guan Qianli." Du Feng suddenly stared ahead and shouted a name. The few of them could not help but look over and saw a row of people in blue standing on the opposite hillside. One of them stared at them coldly for a while, then gently raised his hand and the dozen or so people in blue quickly flew back and disappeared into the boundless fog. "Looking at their clothes, they seem to be the other group from Heartless Palace, right?" Yu Qianqiu asked. "Yes." Du Feng said with a solemn expression, "I've dealt with this person before. He's the number one among the soul formation stage disciples of Heartless Palace and is very difficult to deal with. Looking at his actions just now, it seems that he already knows about his fellow disciples being killed. I'm afraid this matter will not be resolved peacefully." Hui Yunlong looked into the distance and snorted coldly, "There are only 15 of them, we don't need to be afraid of them." "I'm afraid that's the reason why they left." Du Feng slowly said in a low voice, "If we can join forces, it doesn't mean that they can't do the same. With the rallying power of Heartless Palace, if they really want to gather people to join forces, I'm afraid we'll be in trouble." Yu Qianqiu watched as the mythical Fire Palace disciples below scattered white powder to extinguish the flames on the corpses, then searched for the storage bags and storage bracelets that were burnt black. As he looked, he took out a piece of white jade and played with it in his hand. He slowly said, "If trouble comes, we'll solve it. There's nothing to worry about." After he said so, the others didn't say anything else. The three parties continued to move forward to search for rare treasures. However, Du Feng and Hui Yunlong agreed that the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce couldn't be the vanguard anymore. With regards to this, Yu Qianqiu didn't have any objections and let Mu Qinjiao lead her people to follow behind the 2 major sections. However, some things were always like this. Good things didn't come true but bad things came true. After half a day, the 3 parties that were searching for rare treasures all stopped and stared blankly ahead. Yu Qianqiu and the other 2 looked at each other and quickly moved to the front of the group. After seeing the situation clearly, Du Feng and Hui Yunlong's expressions instantly changed. There were 7 groups of people standing quietly in a fan shape in front of them. The group in the middle was the Heartless Palace disciples that had left after meeting each other. Guan Qianli's expression was solemn as he looked at them coldly. After lightly waving his hand, the 2 groups of people on both sides quickly spread out and surrounded Yu Qianqiu and the others. After the 7 teams dispersed, Yu Qianqiu looked around and roughly estimated that there were at least 160 to 70 people, which was more than 100 people than them. The mythical Fire Palace and Spirit Cultivation sect disciples quickly retreated and formed a circle to guard the outside. Mu Qinjiao bit her lips lightly and didn't say a word. Tao Zhong and the others were already shocked. "Guan Qianli, what do you mean by this?" Du Feng shouted. At the same time he shouted, a "Kacha" sound was heard. Yu Qianqiu crushed the white jade in his hand into powder. Guan Qianli looked at them and said indifferently, "Du Feng, Hui Yunlong, when I met you before, I was already warning you. Who knew that you wouldn't know what's good for you and still mixed with the people who killed my Heartless Palace disciples. This is clearly a disgrace to my Heartless Palace. Since that's the case, don't blame me for being impolite." The large triangular formation formed by over 300 demigod realm lords had already picked up their pace. First of all, they had more or less memorized the illustrations in the Jade archives, so they didn't have to stop and compare them. Secondly, they also realized that they had been following behind others to pick up scraps. The front had already been swept by others once, and the good stuff had already been taken by others. What they had found were things that were not of high value. Hence, everyone's thoughts flew to the front. It was also at this time that Yunnan Tian, who was at the front, couldn't hold back his anger and couldn't help but attack a group of people who were passing by. He lit up the fire and in the end, Over 100 people swarmed forward. In just a few seconds the group of people were all killed with a kacha sound. In the end, when they checked the results of the battle, they discovered that there was an immortal herb worth over 10 million divine-grade spirit stones in one of the people's storage pouches. Chapter 8:21. An immortal herb worth 10 million divine-grade spirit stones might not be much in the world of immortals, but to these smugglers from the human world, it was undoubtedly an unbelievable amount of wealth. It was like a group of poor people who usually only had cornbread to eat, and they were suddenly served a table full of Manchu Han imperial feast. The immortal herb was carefully stored away. Everyone was nervous, excited, and agitated, and they began to act crazily. Relying on their numbers, they would snatch it from anyone they met. After a few rounds of work, under everyone's nervous cooperation, they suddenly realized something strange. After a few rounds of work, the fights were obviously thrilling and intense, and even scared everyone out of their wits. But the strange thing was, no one was injured. It was like seeing a ghost. Most of the 300 people were in the middle stage of the soul-forming stage, and the opponents they met were mostly in the late stage. According to the understanding of the cultivation world, a late-stage soul-forming stage should be able to defeat many middle-stage soul-forming stage cultivators, but the late-stage soul-forming stage cultivators here gave everyone a strange feeling. They looked like tigers and their momentum and methods were scary enough, but when they really fought, they gave off the feeling of a sick cat. It was really a waste of their cultivation. Lu Yanqing was most disgusted by everyone's fighting and killing, but she also knew that she might be able to make decisions for others, but not for Yu Qianqiu. In the beginning, when people came to hand over the things they stole, she would always advise everyone to stop fighting and killing. But now that everyone had tasted the sweetness and their confidence was at its peak, how could they give up so easily? But it was not good to reject her, so someone immediately brought up Yu Qianqiu, saying, "We have no choice. I don't want to fight and kill either. But we can't disobey the torture envoy. Why don't you tell the torture envoy as long as he says something, we will stop immediately?" Lu Yanqing was speechless. How could she persuade Yu Qianqiu? That guy had never taken her, the world's most beautiful woman, seriously. Everyone was a wily old fox, and when they saw that bringing up Yu Qianqiu was useful, they all followed suit, making Lu Yanqing speechless. Lu Yanqing had no choice but to pretend that she did not hear or see anything. She focused all her energy on the Jade Archive and the immortal herbs that everyone had sent over. After a massacre, the surroundings were a mess. Yu Nantian, who was wearing a white velvet robe, glanced at the corpses on the ground gracefully and said to himself with a mocking expression, "The cultivators of the immortal realm are just so." His gaze fell on a severed hand at his feet. He opened his palm and immediately grabbed the severed hand. He slowly pulled off a storage bracelet from his severed hand and casually threw it away. Then he took out a piece of white silk cloth and blew a few hot breaths on the storage bracelet. While watching everyone collect the spoils of war, he wiped the storage bracelet with the white silk cloth. Only after wiping the storage bracelet until it was shiny did he put it on his left hand. He tossed the white handkerchief aside and raised his right hand and left hand side by side. There was a storage bracelet on each of his wrists, making for an interesting contrast. Yunnan Tian smiled with satisfaction. At this moment, Shu Xn of the Womanland flashed to his side. She stared at the two bracelets on his wrists and frowned. "Yunnan, we agreed that we would hand over the items and then distribute them together. Why are you wearing them on your own wrist?" Yunnan Tian said disapprovingly, "Who said I wasn't going to hand them over? I just wanted to try them on first." "You don't say. Things from the immortal realm are really good. It's too ugly to wear a storage bag on one's body. Look at this bracelet. It has a lot of space inside. The most important thing is that it's beautiful and elegant. It's no different from an ornament. I like it. If I can give one to each of my female disciples, I believe they will look good on their hands." Shu Xn handed the storage pouch to him with a look of disdain and said, "This is what we collected. Send it over." Yunnan Tian withdrew his hands into his fluffy sleeves and frowned. "Your old lover Nongzhu is in there. You can send it yourself. Why do you want me to send it? I'm not your subordinate. I can go by myself." A trace of pain flashed across Shu Xin's face. She gritted her teeth and said, "He killed 3 of my sworn brothers. I don't want to see him again." Yunnan Tian was stunned. Then he remembered that Nongzhu killed Hua Zongming and others on Shenzhen Island. He shook his head slightly and said, "Shu Xing, let me give you a piece of advice. Let bygones be bygones. Now the most important thing is to work together and not to have internal strife. Think about how many pioneers in the cultivation world dream of achieving immortality. Unfortunately, they can't get it. Now the opportunity is right in front of you. You should think about it carefully. Who said I want to have internal strife? I just don't want to see him again. Shu Xang carried the storage pouch and said angrily, "Are you going or not?" Yu Nantian sneered and said, "A woman should act like a woman. You look like a tigress. No wonder Nongzhu doesn't want you." "What did you say?" Shu Xian roared crazily. Yu Nantian snatched the storage pouch from her hand and disappeared instantly. When he came to the center of the triangular formation, he immediately found Nongzhu and complained, "Nongzhu, Shu Xian is too unreasonable. You should discipline her." Unexpectedly, after a long time, he saw Nongzhu staring at the front with a serious expression. Wen Lanfeng and Hu Changshou also noticed the abnormality. Wen Lanfeng asked, "Nongzhu, what's wrong with you?" Nongzhu took out a piece of jade and frowned deeply. She said, "When Yu Qianqiu left, we each injected a strand of divine sense into a piece of jade to exchange information. The main reason was that he was afraid that we couldn't find him when we were in trouble. But just now I sensed that my divine sense had been released from the jade. He should have crushed the jade. What does Yu Qianqiu want to tell us?" Hu Changshou pondered and said, "Could it be that he encountered some danger or found some precious treasure?" Yu Nantian was stunned and said, "It's okay to find a precious treasure, but please don't let anything happen to him. If something happens to him, no matter how many things we grab, it's useless. We can't get out and we can't go back. Are we going to be trapped in the divine ruin realm? Chicks, what can happen to that guy with his ability?" Although Nongzhu said so, she was actually worried in her heart. She looked around and said solemnly, "No matter what, since he crushed the jade, it means that he is summoning us. Immediately gather everyone and quickly follow me." Several people already felt that something was wrong. They did not dare to hesitate and quickly gathered people. After a while, more than 300 people gathered again. Under the leadership of Nongzhu, they flew all the way unscrupulously. The sudden gathering of so many people across the sky scared the small teams of various sects below. Fortunately, these people did not have any intention to attack them. After the disciples of various sects watched these people go far away, they all suspected that something big had happened ahead, or some precious treasure had appeared. Otherwise, it would be impossible for so many sects to gather together and act together. These people's clothes look varied. Why do I feel that they don't look like disciples of the celestial world sects? The crowd below thought as they watched them fly away. The person beside him laughed and said, "There are no less than 10,000 sects, chambers of commerce and clans in the celestial world. Can you recognize all of them?" The former frowned and said, "These people don't have a uniform. Don't tell me that they are made up of people from hundreds of sections." The latter rubbed his chin and pondered, "You don't say, it really is possible. I know one of them and have interacted with him once. He is a disciple of the Chaotian Palace. His name is Shui Mingqing. Mythical Fire Palace, Spirit Cultivation Sect and 4 Links Chamber of Commerce were surrounded. Du Feng looked around and shouted in a deep voice, "What benefits did the Heartless Palace give you? You actually helped them to deal with us. We are all famous sects, there is no need to be so extreme, right? Aren't you afraid of causing a war between sects?" Guan Qianli said indifferently, "Du Feng, you think too highly of yourself. Do you think that the Mythical Fire Palace and the Spirit Cultivation Sect will start a war with the various sects for the two of you?" Hui Yunlong flew into a rage. "Guan Qianli, don't go overboard. Who doesn't know that your Heartless Palace's people are plundering and slaughtering disciples of other sects in the ruins of God? Could it be that you are allowed to kill others and others are not allowed to kill your Heartless Palace's disciples?" Guan Qianli snorted, "I didn't say that others are not allowed to kill my Heartless Palace's disciples. As long as they have the ability, they can come and take revenge on my Heartless Palace. Could it be that they don't have the ability to take revenge and they don't allow my Heartless Palace to take revenge? You guys killed all the disciples that entered the ruins of God, what will they use to take revenge on you?" Hui Yunlong roared. Guan Qianli shook his head slightly, "That's because they don't have the ability, don't tell me you want to blame it on my Heartless Palace? You." Hui Yunlong was so angry that he was speechless. The eyes of Yu Qianqiu, who was constantly paying attention to the rear, lit up. He saw 2 figures descend from the top of a mountain not far away. Nongzhu and Hu Changshou had already arrived first. Actually, this place was not far from where the hundreds of people were. It was only a few dozen kilometers away. With their cultivation, it would not take long for them to rush over at full speed. Yu Qianqiu looked around at the crowd that had gathered to watch the show, and immediately secretly sent a sound transmission to the two of them. After making some arrangements, Nongzhu quickly flew back, leaving Hu Changshu to watch. Yu Qianqiu, who had been silent all this while, walked out from between the two of them and shouted at Guan Tianli, "Surnamed Guan, don't bully others just because you have more people. I am the one who killed the people of your heartless palace, it has nothing to do with them. If you have the ability, then come at me alone. Whether it's one-on-one or all at once, I will accept it." Guan Tianli said indifferently, "I heard that your methods are extraordinary, I don't dare to take that risk, it's safer to bully others with numbers." As he spoke, he looked at the two sides and said, "Everyone, what are you waiting for, let's make our move." At this moment, someone shouted from afar, "Bully others with numbers? Good. This is my favorite thing, let us join in the fun." Everyone looked in the direction of the voice, only to see a group of densely packed figures flying over from behind the mountain. Chapter 822. Hundreds of silhouettes scattered in the sky, surrounding Yu Qianqiu's group of more than 100 people. Everything happened so suddenly that the surroundings fell silent in an instant. Everyone looked at the group of people who had appeared out of thin air and discovered that each of them had an unruly aura. Their clothes were all different, and it was impossible to tell which sect they were from. Nongzhu stood on a small hill and looked down. She secretly transmitted her voice to Yu Qianqiu. Did it feel good to be a loyal and righteous person just now? Then she asked loudly, "Who was the one who said they were bullying us with numbers? I like it very much, so I came to see who has more people." Damn it. If there was a chance to be a good person, it would be a waste not to do it. Yu Qianqiu immediately pointed at Guan Tianli and said, "He said it. He is bullying us with numbers." Ah. Nongzhu rubbed her hands and said excitedly, "Good. Let's learn from each other." The people who were invited by the Passionless Palace suddenly became restless. No one expected such a thing to happen. In the blink of an eye they were surrounded and all of them were on guard. The people who were watching from afar also became restless. They knew there was a big show to watch. Some of them even hoped that these people would fight to the death so that they could take advantage of the situation. Guan Qianli's pupils suddenly shrank. He stared at Du Feng and Hui Yunlong and said, "So you still have some tricks up your sleeves. No wonder you dared to mix with the people who killed the Passionless Palace's disciples. You purposely lured me to take the bait. I admire you." Du Feng and Hui Yunlong looked at each other in dismay. The two of them had no idea where Nongzhu and the rest came from. The blank expressions on their faces showed that they didn't know if they were happy or lucky. The disciples of the mythical Fire Palace and the Spirit Cultivation sect also looked at each other. Everyone was confused and didn't know what was going on. Guan Tianli furrowed his brows. From the expressions of Du Feng and the others, he could see that the two groups of people were not together at all. He immediately cupped his hands at Nongzhu and said, "I am Guan Tianli, a disciple of the Passionless Palace. I wonder which sect you are from? We have no enmity in the past, so there is no need to make things difficult. As long as brother is magnanimous, my Heartless Palace will definitely remember this favor." His words sounded like he was using the Heartless Palace to scare them, but these people didn't even know what the Heartless Palace was. Nongzhu followed Yu Qianqiu's instructions and turned her head to look at Shui Mingqing beside her. Shui Mingqing immediately took a step forward, stared at Guan Tianli and roared angrily, "Guan Tianli, who said we have no enmity in the past? My Skyward Palace's disciples were killed by your Heartless Palace's Che Mingqian, and I'm the only one left. I might as well tell you that these friends from various sects were all invited by me to take revenge." When he stood in the crowd, no one recognized him at first. When he stood out from the crowd, some people in the crowd who were watching the fun immediately began to talk about him, saying that they had seen Shui Mingqing and that he was indeed a disciple of the Palace of Heaven. Now the crowd was in an uproar. They didn't expect that the Heartless Palace would be so cruel that they even dared to kill the people of the Palace of Heaven. The Palace of Heaven was not an ordinary sect, but the #1 alchemy sect in the immortal world. In fact, as soon as Shui Mingqing arrived here and saw Yu Qianqiu and Nongzhu's performance, he immediately realized that he had been used by them. But he had no other choice. Besides, he also wanted to do this. As long as he could avenge the death of his fellow disciples, not to mention that he could not vent his anger, even if he did not bring back the rare treasures, he would still be famous when he returned to the sect, and his future in the Skyward Palace would be bright. A big sect like theirs was actually not short of money. Sometimes face was more important than treasures and money. That's right. Nongzhu looked around at the crowd and said loudly, "Although we have more than 300 brothers here from various sects, we have all been helped by the Palace of Heaven. Today there are disciples of the Palace of Heaven reporting the funeral, which shocked us greatly. I didn't expect such an inhumane thing to happen. Since the disciples of the Palace of Heaven are begging us, it's time for us to repay their kindness. Brothers, don't you think so? Yes. More than 300 lords waved their arms and shouted with righteous indignation. In their hearts, however, they were all laughing. How many years had it been since they played such childish tricks? The onlookers were speechless. The Palace of Heaven was indeed the Palace of Heaven, worthy of being the #1 alchemy sect in the immortal world. As long as they left one person alive, they would immediately attract a large number of helpers to take revenge. Oh my! More than 300 sects all sent people to fight back. This momentum was even stronger than that of the Heartless Palace. The most terrifying thing that everyone thought of was that if something happened to someone from these more than 300 sects, would other people come to take revenge? More than 300 sects had entered the realm of the divine ruin, which was close to 10,000 people. Even 1/10 of them was not a joke. Guan Qianli's expression darkened. He stared at Shui Mingqing and said slowly, "Brother Shui, I'm afraid there's some misunderstanding in this matter. However, since it has already happened, the Heartless Palace will not shirk responsibility. I will definitely report to the sect after this. I believe that the Heartless Palace will definitely give your Palace of Heaven an explanation. I hope that Brother Shui won't let the misunderstanding between our sects deepen. After all, there are so many pairs of eyes watching here. If the matter gets out of hand, it's impossible for it not to spread." What he meant was that he was using the name of the Heartless Palace to oppress people again. Hui Yunlong immediately laughed and said, "Guan Qianli, didn't you just say that anyone who has the ability to take revenge on the Heartless Palace can come? Why are you afraid now?" The 6 sects that Guan Qianli had invited to help were already exchanging glances with each other, as if they wanted to take the opportunity to escape. Yu Qianqiu, who was silently observing the surroundings, narrowed his eyes and immediately transmitted his voice to Nongzhu and the others. "Why are you talking nonsense with them? Kill them." Guan Qianli glanced around and snorted coldly, "Shui Mingqing, you better think this through. Although we only have 160 to 170 people, we have many soul transformation final stage experts. Although you've invited many people, most of them are only at the soul transformation middle stage. It's not certain who will win." He was trying to calm the other 6 sections. Just as Nongzhu was about to make the first move, Yu Qianqiu suddenly shouted from below, "Bulsh *T. Don't forget that there are still the 3 of us. Give me your lives." Before he finished speaking, he had already shot towards the people of the Heartless Palace. A group of densely packed black shadows burst out from his sleeves. The lords of the various countries couldn't hold back any longer and wanted to make a move. Nongzhu had just given the signal, but Yu Qianqiu had already ignited the fire first. Not to be outdone, everyone immediately swarmed to attack. Mu Tianjiao clenched her teeth and slammed her sword against her shield. With a clang she shouted, "Kill." She had already made up her mind to fight for the future of the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce, so she did not want to be outdone. Seeing that she had already rushed out, Du Feng and Hui Yunlong shouted almost at the same time, "Kill!" Rumble. The earth shook and loud noises rang out continuously. The few groups of people madly collided with each other. With the addition of the mythical fire palace, there was suddenly fire everywhere, and the place instantly became a pot of porridge. The surrounding people who were watching the battle quickly retreated, afraid of being implicated. The group of people from the Heartless Palace shot out their flying swords at the same time. No one knew what their flying swords were made of, but they actually blocked the attack of the black flame flying swords. Guan Qianli shouted angrily, "Kill him first." The flying swords that shook off the black flame flying swords immediately rushed over with the force of thunder. The joint attack of 15 experts at the soul transformation final stage was no small matter. Just the momentum alone was almost enough to make it hard for Yu Qianqiu to open his eyes. Nongzhu, who had taken the time to glance over, was shocked. Just as she was about to break away from her opponents to help, she saw Yu Qianqiu push out his palms in the air, and the 15 flying swords instantly shattered into silver powder. Immediately after that, Yu Qianqiu shouted angrily, "Want to run?" Absorbing Star's great skill. Before he finished speaking, 15 clouds of white smoke exploded in the air. The black flame flying swords that were shaken away were like a flock of crows fighting for food, and they respectively burrowed into the 15 clouds of white smoke. Before the white smoke dispersed, hundreds of black flame flying swords had already followed Yu Qianqiu to another place where the battle was going on. Such a ferocious scene made many people shiver uncontrollably. When the white smoke dissipated, only 15 storage bracelets fell to the ground. As for Guan Qianli and the other 15 people, they were already nowhere to be seen. Nongzhu, who had used the shape displacement transposition technique, was really speechless. The strength of Yu Qianqiu had already exceeded her imagination. One absorbing star's great skill actually killed 15 experts at the soul transformation final stage at the same time. In her grief and indignation, she resolutely turned around and caught her opponents to vent her anger. However, to the soul transformation final stage experts from the various countries, the scene of Yu Qianqiu killing the 15 experts at the soul transformation final stage instantly made them feel refreshed, and they felt a sense of pride. This is our world's #1 expert. Of course he's powerful. However, this scene was no different from a nightmare to the remaining disciples of the 6 sections. When they saw Yu Qianqiu rushing over with a group of flying swords, they were instantly scared out of their wits. They were already in a situation where they were outnumbered, and they were barely able to put up a fight. As soon as Yu Qianqiu arrived, they panicked and were instantly beaten to death by the people surrounding them. They died such an unjust death. When there was no work to be done in one area, Yu Qianqiu immediately flew to another area. However, wherever he flew to, there was a sea of dead and injured people there, and he didn't even have a chance to help. After this jinx had gone one round, the battle was over. The various feudal lords were already in a complete mess, and they were frantically fighting over the storage bracelets and storage pouches from the corpses. This scene had Du Feng and the others completely dumbfounded. When they came to their senses and wanted to search for the spoils of war, they found that they didn't even get a single strand of hair from the corpses. On the other hand, the feudal lords were showing off to each other. One of them was holding 2 storage bracelets and the other was holding 5 storage pouches, and they were winking at each other. Yunantian was the one who reacted the fastest. This guy was the first to rush to the place where Yu Qianqiu killed the 15 people, and he took all the 15 storage bracelets for himself. He was holding a large pile of storage bracelets and he couldn't stop laughing. He had completely lost the graceful and elegant temperament that he had always maintained. It's over so soon? Yu Qianqiu stopped in the air and was slightly stunned. To be honest, he hadn't fought to his heart's content for a long time. He thought that he could fight to his heart's content this time because there were many people, but who knew that it would be over so soon? Why couldn't he find an opponent with the absorbing star's great skill? Sigh. Yu Qianqiu looked into the distance speechlessly. He now thought that he had found a little bit of the lonely and invincible feeling of Bai Changchun. Chapter 823. The lords of the various countries who did not manage to snatch anything looked unwillingly at the disciples of the various sects who were watching the battle from afar. Their wolf-like gazes immediately made the disciples of the various sects feel that something was wrong, and they quickly retreated. This group of fellows were now extremely confident, and no longer placed the disciples of the various sects in their eyes. They exchanged glances and greeted each other, and there were indeed signs of them wanting to make a move. However, Nongzhu and the others had already received Yu Qianqiu's secret instructions. They called out to the crowd and left the place. Yu Qianqiu looked at Nongzhu, who had flown away with a stomach full of bewilderment. Didn't this old brat not want to worry about anything? Why was he so energetic when he was doing this? Du Feng and the others were speechless as they looked at the corpses all around them. They then looked at Yu Qianqiu with reverence in their eyes. Everyone knew that the reason why they were able to avoid danger so smoothly this time was because of Yu Qianqiu. The scene of the instant kill kept appearing in everyone's minds, causing their hairs to stand on end just thinking about it. After this battle, the people of the mythical Fire Palace, the Spirit Cultivation sect, and the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce were almost unobstructed within the ruins of God. Due to Yu Qianqiu holding the fort, there was no need to worry about anything. They were not greedy. As long as others did not provoke them, they would not provoke others. They searched for all sorts of treasures on their own, and their harvest was not small. However, the situation within the ruins of God had undergone a huge change. The news of the disciples of the Heartless Palace and the other 7 great sects being annihilated was like a stone that stirred up 1,000 ripples. The disciples of the various sects all followed suit and started to gather people to form teams. In the following days, Yu Qianqiu and the others witnessed the fighting and killing. They could always see the situation of many bullying the few. However, Yu Qianqiu was no longer interested in participating in this liveliness. He was now wholeheartedly focusing on the various jade archives. Nongzhu and the other rascals would naturally take care of collecting immortal herbs and other rare treasures. What he needed to do now was to prepare for his life in the immortal world in the future. He needed to learn all the resources in his hands first. He didn't want to run out and still be ignorant. During this period he would always secretly ask Tao Zhong about the various situations in the immortal world through voice transmissions. If Tao Zhong wasn't clear about something he would ask Du Feng and Hui Yunlong for guidance. Although everyone was a little surprised, they said what they could and didn't hide anything. The words and actions of the latter two seemed to be trying to rope him in. Mu Tianjiao had always been silently watching his every move. In reality, Yu Qianqiu's identity as a loose cultivator had greatly moved her. She had always been pondering how to get Yu Qianqiu to officially join the Four Links Chamber of Commerce. The reason for this was that Yu Qianqiu's ability was beneficial to the Four Links Chamber of Commerce. In the blink of an eye, another half a month had passed. There were less than 10 days left before the Divine Ruin Realm closed. The thick white fog that blotted out the sky and covered the earth also caused the group of people to stop. Yu Qianqiu originally thought that the fog where everyone was already thick enough, but he didn't expect that the fog in front of them would be even thicker. It was likely that their visibility in the fog was less than 10 meters. He couldn't help but turn around and ask, "Does anyone know what's going on?" Everyone shook their heads with solemn expressions. Du Feng said in a deep voice, "Everyone, let's go. I didn't think we would already be here. We can't go any further, it's very dangerous inside." "How dangerous?" Yu Qianqiu asked. Hui Yunlong's pair of red eyebrows knitted together as he interjected. "The spirit qi in here is so thick. Although there are even more rare and valuable spirit herbs, there are also many fierce beasts that gather here to absorb the spirit qi of heaven and earth. Even ordinary immortal experts don't dare to trespass here. There have already been countless seniors who died here, and those who were lucky enough to escape have all repeatedly warned their descendants not to trespass here. Every time the Divine Ruin Realm opens, basically only the people of the Immortal Palace dare to enter. With our cultivation it's very dangerous to barge in." "Fierce beasts?" Yu Qianqiu stared at the vast sea of fog in front of him and pondered, which is more powerful, the so-called fierce beasts or those spirit beasts or immortal beasts? Everyone's faces stiffened when they heard this, and they all looked at him with an incomprehensible expression. Hui Yunlong's mouth was wide open, and he was already speechless. Du Feng coughed and explained, "Actually, the so-called fierce beasts include spirit beasts and immortal beasts. Fierce beasts are generally creatures left behind from ancient times. They have unique innate conditions which are long lifespans and most of them are talented. Although the heavens have given them such favorable innate conditions, they have also given them an innate flaw that is difficult to overcome. If they can overcome this flaw, they can advance to become spirit beasts or immortal beasts." "Fierce beasts advance to spirit beasts or immortal beasts?" Yu Qianqiu had a blank expression as he asked in astonishment, "What flaw?" Du Feng subconsciously touched his forehead and explained with an awkward smile, "Although fierce beasts have long lifespans, most of them are chaotic and stupid. In terms of intelligence, they are not even as good as most ordinary poultry or wild beasts in the forest. This is their fatal flaw. However, once a fierce beast develops intelligence, it becomes a spirit beast. Once a spirit beast develops intelligence and understands a cultivation method that suits it, it can cultivate to the realm of immortal beasts, and at that time, it can transform into a human form. The long cultivation process is much more difficult than that of a normal demon cultivator. A demon cultivator can transform into a human form after forming their core or nascent soul, but a spirit beast must cultivate to the realm of immortal beasts. However, the power of the two cannot be compared." Yu Qianqiu nodded slightly as he pondered. He couldn't help but think of Bai Suzhen. Bai Suzhen was a demon cultivator, and she had transformed into a human form a long time ago. Du Feng paused for a moment, then continued with a smile, "Actually, the immortal crocodile lord that you admire, who dared to talk back to the immortal emperor, used to be a fierce beast. It's just that after he cultivated to a certain level, he had the opportunity to become an immortal lord." Du Feng suddenly paused again. Everyone's gazes were fixed on the thick white fog in front of them. The fog started to shake violently, and the ground started to shake violently as well. Before anyone could react, a few rays of golden light shot out from the white fog, and the white fog behind them instantly turned black, giving off a feeling as if a mountain was pressing down on them. A roar that almost pierced everyone's eardrums shook the white fog, and a huge black shadow appeared behind it, rushing out of the white fog with a loud bang. A huge head with a bloody mouth suddenly rushed out, directly chasing after the rays of golden light. It was so huge, but its speed was unbelievably fast. The huge body that followed after directly pressed down on the dumbfounded people. Everyone was shocked, and they all teleported away, before Yu Qianqiu could see clearly what was going on, he saw a few rays of light explode, directly shooting at the huge head that rushed out of the white fog. Bang bang. Several loud sounds rang out. The huge head was smashed into the ground on the spot, shaking Yu Qianqiu and the others so much that their vision became blurry. They almost couldn't stand still and hurriedly flew away. Bastard! How dare you chase after us, you're courting death! A thunderous roar exploded in the air, and a few rays of golden light had already appeared. All of them looked a little battered, obviously having suffered a lot in the thick white fog. Hiss! A long roar shook the heavens. Earth and rocks filled the sky, immediately forcing the others to retreat once more. Only Yu Qianqiu remained fearless. The earth and rocks couldn't harm him in the slightest. The huge head that had sunk into the ground lifted up once again, and the huge red eyes with a circle of golden patterns were filled with anger. The fangs in its bloody mouth were frightening, and its thick tongue trembled like a javelin as it roared. It could be seen that its anger had reached its limit. Only then did Yu Qianqiu see clearly what kind of fierce beast it was. It was actually a ferocious giant snake with a diameter of 10 meters, and its black scales spread out, emitting a disgusting stench. The huge body behind it was hidden in the fog and no one knew how long it was. At this moment, a huge pillar suddenly broke out of the thick white fog, and with a boom, it swept towards the few people in golden robes in the air with a terrifying momentum. Bastard! We can't let it live. 5 of the 6 people in golden robes waved their sleeves, and 5 rays of light shot out. Bang! It set off a monstrous wave and knocked away the huge snake tail on the spot. Another person in golden robes raised an ancient mirror in his hand at the same time. The mirror flashed with mysterious light like ripples, and a fierce ray of light instantly enveloped the entire snake head. Hiss! The huge snake let out an incomparably painful howl, and its long dragon-like body that was hidden in the fog immediately broke out of the fog with a boom. Yu Qianqiu was shocked. This huge snake was probably 150 to 160 meters long, and at this moment, it was curled up into a ball to protect its head, and it was rolling on the ground like a moving mountain, causing the ground to tremble. From the roar of pain, one could tell that he was already injured. This beast's skin is tough, but its eyes have already been blinded by my mystic light treasure mirror. Take this opportunity, combine the 6 swords into one and kill it. The 6 people turned into 6 golden streams of light and scattered, shooting diagonally into the sky. Suddenly there was a thunderous sound in the air, and the fog suddenly broke open. 6 golden streams of light pushed a 10-meter-long hexagonal giant sword down from the sky at an astonishing speed, and in the blink of an eye, it plunged into the huge snake that was curled up into a ball. Bang! There was a loud noise and countless rays of light shot out from the huge snake that was curled up into a ball. In an instant, Yu Qianqiu, who had surged out his aura shield, was still shaken by the burst of light and flew back dozens of meters before barely stopping. His aura shield had already collapsed, and the blood hanging from the corner of his mouth said everything. Hiss! The endless howl stopped abruptly, and 6 golden streams of light shot out from the body of the huge snake that was curled up into a ball. They flashed into the air, and the original bodies of the 6 people in golden robes appeared in the air, and each of them looked down coldly. The huge snake that was curled up into a ball slowly wriggled weakly, and suddenly seemed to have lost its strength. It collapsed with a loud bang and spread out on the ground, motionless. Under many of the hard leather armor, there were bloody cuts and the 2 huge eyes became paste and blood kept flowing out. On the forehead between the eyes, there was a huge hole that was pierced by something, and red and white things were slowly flowing out. Chapter 8:24. Yu Qianqiu slowly wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and looked at the scene in front of him in shock. The momentum and power of the 6 people joining forces to kill the giant snake made him gasp. Although he did not know what the cultivation of the 6 people was, the strength of the immortal realm experts was undoubtedly shown. He knew that with his current cultivation, it would be difficult to catch up. What shocked him the most was the ferocity of the giant snake. It took 6 immortal realm experts to kill it. Was this the power of a ferocious beast? He could not help but think of the situation when he saw Immortal Lord Crocodile's huge body at the Moon Lake. He wondered how powerful Immortal Lord Crocodile's real body would be. At this moment, dozens of golden streams of light flashed through the white fog and stood in the air with the 6 golden-robed people. All of them looked battered. There were about 80 of them. The group stared at the giant snake's corpse below. Was it killed by you guys? Yes. Why haven't the rest come out yet? Haven't they succeeded? We've succeeded. Those who should have come out have come out. The rest can't come out anymore. We've lost 16 people. The group of golden-robed people fell into a short silence after talking. Someone sighed and said, "Let's go back and report." "What about this giant snake? The autopsy is worth some money." Although Yu Qianqiu was not far away, he was not close either. In addition, they had their backs to him, so he could not tell who was talking to who. One of the golden-robed people looked back at Yu Qianqiu and said, "This thing has thick skin and flesh. It will take a lot of effort to dissect it. Money is a small matter. Let's go back and report. Let's just treat it as letting them off easy. Let's go." The group of golden-robed people shouted to each other and turned into streams of light that shot into the distance. Only the remains of the giant snake were left in the place. Yu Qianqiu silently recalled the words of those people just now. He didn't know what the people of the immortal palaces were doing, especially those words about whether they had succeeded or not, which made him stare suspiciously at the dense sea of fog. Could it be that there was a treasure that even the immortal palaces coveted in it? Behind him, a group of people flew over and stopped beside Yu Qianqiu, looking at the pile of dead giant snakes in silence. They were Du Feng and the others, who could not withstand the aftershocks of the battle and had run away. All of a sudden, Du Feng noticed the bloodstain on the corner of Yu Qianqiu's mouth and asked in surprise, "You're injured?" "I'm fine. It's just a small injury, it's not worth mentioning." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and pointed at the remains of the giant snake. "That thing is ours. It should be worth some money." As soon as he finished speaking, Hui Yunlong exclaimed in surprise, "So it's the black dragon giant python." In a flicker, Hui Yunlong landed on the ground, caressing the giant snake's scales. Compared to the giant snake's remains, he looked like a small pebble. Hui Yunlong clicked his tongue. "This is a good thing, the scales on its body can be refined into many sets of defensive armor." Yu Qianqiu looked at Du Feng in confusion, but the latter explained with a smile, "The mythical fire palace is the #1 sect in the immortal world. Since this guy said so, it can't be wrong." Yu Qianqiu's figure flickered, standing on top of the giant snake's body, staring at Hui Yunlong below. "How much is this broken snake worth?" Hui Yunlong took a few steps back, looking at the giant snake for a moment before answering in a solemn voice, "Around 1 billion divine grade spirit stones. Its true value depends on what grade of treasure it can be refined into. This is related to the level of the artificer. The higher the grade of the refined treasure, the more valuable it is." "Only 1 billion? *CK Mashishi. Yu Qianqiu was a little disappointed. He didn't expect such a ferocious giant snake to only be worth 1 billion. Turning to Du Feng, he asked, "What are these immortal palaces people doing? Why did they make this beast so angry? It seems like it's chasing after them." Below, Hui Yunlong had already summoned the people from the Lifire Palace over. A group of disciples from the Lifire Palace touched the wounds of the gigantic serpent and sprinkled some unknown liquid onto it. A moment later, the wounds of the gigantic serpent burst into flames as black smoke mixed with a disgusting stench permeated the air. Yu Qianqiu and Du Feng immediately dodged far away to watch. They saw that the flames were using the flesh beneath the scales as fuel, quickly burning into the giant snake's body. Black smoke rose up and a foul smell spread far and wide. Du Feng frowned as he answered, "Other than collecting rare treasures, the immortal palace's people usually come here to look for fierce beast eggs or baby beasts that have yet to open their eyes. Most likely they were discovered by this giant snake when they were trying to steal the eggs, that's why they chased after them." "Beast eggs? Baby beasts?" Yu Qianqiu was flabbergasted. Could it be that they want to tame a fierce beast? Du Feng shook his head. "It's impossible to tame a fierce beast, this is related to their ignorance. It's precisely because of their ignorance that they're very stubborn. They only believe in the first person they see when they open their eyes, treating them as their parents. Otherwise, no matter how young the ferocious beast you catch is, as long as it opens its eyes, you won't be able to tame it again. It would rather starve to death than eat a mouthful of food given to it by others. You will never be able to raise it." "You're saying that only by bringing back the beast eggs and baby beasts that have yet to open their eyes can they be tamed?" Yu Qianqiu asked. Du Feng nodded. "Not only can they be tamed, their loyalty is also very high, incomparably loyal, the kind that will never betray you. Many sects in the immortal world favor them because of their absolute loyalty. Until the day they die, they will absolutely obey you, never betray you. A baby beast or a beast egg that has yet to open its eyes, even at the lowest price, can be sold for more than 10 billion divine grade spirit stones." "So expensive?" Yu Qianqiu asked suspiciously. No matter how loyal a ferocious beast cub is, how long will it take to raise it to be of use? Du Feng had gradually gotten used to Huang Xiaolong's ignorance, shaking his head with a smile. Don't forget, humans are the smartest. If a baby beast is raised by a fierce beast, it's still a fierce beast. But humans are different. We can use immortal pills to awaken its intelligence while it's still young, allowing it to cultivate from a young age. With human help, the time it takes to cultivate to become an immortal beast won't be any slower than a human becoming an immortal realm master. In the immortal world, people's hearts are hard to fathom. Only immortal beasts will be eternally loyal to you. Just this point alone can't be measured with money. While the two of them were speaking, the remains of the giant serpent had turned into an empty shell, and the flesh and blood inside were burned to ashes by the raging fire. Finally, Hui Yunlong strenuously stored the scales into his storage bracelet, filling up an entire space. Finally done, Yu Qianzhou's gaze fell onto the misty sea of fog, and he was slightly startled. He suddenly thought of Nongzhu's group that had been walking in this direction. Those fellows didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, they didn't know the dangers behind this misty sea of fog. Did they barge in? Then again he felt that it wasn't possible. If they encountered danger that they couldn't solve, Nongzhu would definitely crush the jade stone to ask for help. After a moment of hesitation, Yu Qianzhou said to Du Feng and the rest who were about to continue searching for rare treasures, "You guys go first, I'll look for you later." Amidst everyone's exclamations, Yu Qianzhou disappeared into the misty sea of fog. He wasn't trying to search for something in the misty sea of fog, but he was using the thick fog as cover to return to Utopia. After searching for a while in Utopia, Huang Xiaolong immediately locked onto Nongzhu's position. Although he didn't give Nongzhu the little silver ball, the jade stone in Nongzhu's hand contained a wisp of his divine sense, so he could also find her. Nongzhu was walking and chatting with Wen Lanfeng and the others with her hands behind her back, pointing around from time to time. The way they talked and laughed seemed to treat the divine ruin realm as a tourist resort, and they didn't seem to be on guard at all. Yu Qianzhou, who had suddenly appeared behind them, found it both funny and infuriating. He couldn't help but cough. They suddenly turned around and Nongzhu said in surprise, "Why are you here? Aren't you afraid of exposing yourself by being with us?" Yu Qianzhou looked to both sides and found that not far to his right was the thick sea of fog. It seemed that these fellows were sweeping along the edge of the sea of fog, in the opposite direction of Du Feng and the others. He couldn't help but point to the sea of fog with a smile and said, "Why don't you go in there and have a look?" They immediately looked at each other and Nongzhu waved her hand and said, "Don't mess around, kid. We caught someone before and asked them why they didn't go in. It turns out that there are many fierce beasts in there, and that's a place even immortal realm masters don't dare trespass. Not to mention we've already gotten a lot of things, there's no need to take that risk. No matter how much money we have, it's not as important as our lives." Motherf asterisk her. They're really cunning old fools. I underestimated their intelligence, making me worry for nothing. Yu Qianzhou's face lit up with joy. "You got a lot of things? How many?" Everyone smiled at each other, then Nongzhu chuckled. "There are more than 3,000 kinds of immortal herbs, and we've collected about half of them recorded in the Jade Archives. Although most of them are mid to low-grade Jade Archives, we calculated based on the market price and they're worth about this much." He held up 2 fingers. Yu Qianzhou's eyes lit up. 200 billion divine-grade spirit stones? Other than Lu Yanqing, the others laughed in unison. Nongzhu snickered, "Not 200 billion but 2 trillion divine-grade spirit stones." She took out a jade archive and passed it to Huang Xiaolong saying, "Take a look, we've categorized them according to the prices in the jade archives, everything is listed in there." 2 trillion? Yu Qianzhou was dumbfounded. He gulped as he took the jade archive and carefully examined it. As a result, he was shocked by what he saw. After a long time, he sighed and clicked his tongue as he said, "Although there aren't many high-grade spirit herbs here, our main goal isn't money. It's enough as long as we can gather the spirit herbs we urgently need." As he said this, he was taken aback. He raised his head to look at the others and said, "Damn it! How many people did you guys kill after robbing so many things?" Lu Yanqing bit her lips and the others looked at each other. Nongzhu shook his head with a solemn expression, saying, "We haven't counted them yet, but I'm afraid there must be more than 10,000 people." Chapter 825. Yu Qianzhou was completely speechless. A dignified immortal disciple from the upper realm had actually been killed by a bunch of loafers. He couldn't help but reveal an expression of not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Seeing this, Nongzhu immediately sighed and comforted him. I really didn't expect it to be like this, but what's done is done. The dead can't be resurrected, so what else can we do? Don't give me that. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, we still have to live in the immortal realm in the future. You've killed so many people, you've made enemies with at least a few hundred sections. Let me ask you, when you did it, did you cut the weeds and eliminate the roots? If you want to do it thoroughly and cleanly. Don't leave too many clues for others to use against you. Otherwise, we'll have a lot of trouble in the immortal realm in the future. You all have to show your faces in the immortal realm in the future. It's fine to offend 1 or 2 sects, but offending hundreds of sects is no joke. They were all stunned. They thought that this guy resented them for killing too many people, but who knew that he didn't care about this at all? Instead, he was afraid that they weren't ruthless enough and didn't kill enough. He had truly underestimated the magnanimity of this demon ghost region torture envoy. Back then, he had killed people like scything flax. The corner of Nongju's mouth twitched and she said thoughtfully, it should be more thorough. Everyone is anxious to get their hands on the things, and would rather kill the wrong people than let them go. Come on. I've worried for nothing. These guys aren't any good people. Yu Qianqiu immersed his divine sense into the Jade Archive to check it again. After confirming that the required spirit herbs had been gathered, he raised his head and said, all right, our main goal has been achieved. Gather everyone. The day of the Divine Ruin Realm's closing is not far away. I'm afraid that something might happen if we stay here for too long. I'll send you back first. Leave the alchemy to me. They looked at each other and Nongju said suspiciously, although there are many types of spirit herbs, the quantity of each type is not much. It seems that we can only refine a few immortal ascension pills. Hu Changshou nodded and said, we've already discussed it. These people will leave the Divine Ruin Realm sooner or later. We're going to set up an ambush at the exit. That way we'll definitely reap a great harvest. As he spoke, he waved his hand decisively. As expected of an elite who had been honed for a long time, they were indeed incomparable to the disciples of other sections. Stop. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, I've thought of this method long ago, but you guys don't know that the Immortal Palace's people are guarding the entrance of the Divine Ruin Realm. Don't worry, with these items that are worth 2 trillion, they are the hope of us cultivators in the mortal world. I will have a way to let everyone forge an immortal body and run freely in this immortal world. Seeing that everyone was still confused, Yu Qianqiu took out the token and threw it to Nongju. This is the token of the biggest auction house and appraiser house in the immortal world. It was given to me by the granddaughter of sect leader Wangu Tong. Shui Mingqing is a disciple of the Heaven Palace, the largest alchemy sect in the immortal realm. The red-haired guy who was with me before is a disciple of the mythical Fire Palace, the largest alchemy sect in the immortal realm. Now that everything is in order and we have the capital, it's up to me to do it. Please believe me, it's just a matter of time. When the time comes, everyone will get what they want. They examined the purplish gold medallion. After confirming that it wasn't a fake, they looked at Yu Qianqiu in shock. They hadn't expected him to have connections with so many big sects in the immortal world. He really was capable. The largest alchemy sect? Why does that red-haired kid look like Nanming? Nongju muttered as she returned the token to Yu Qianqiu. She then asked suspiciously, then why did the granddaughter of Wangu Tong give you the token? He asked the question he was most concerned about. Probably because of my good character. It's a private matter. Why do you care so much? Yu Qianqiu gave a perfunctory reply. He waved his hand and said, gather everyone. Be careful, don't let Shui Mingqing suspect our origins. Although Nongju was a little unhappy, she still cooperated with Yu Qianqiu and the others to gather all the people. After all the people gathered, Yu Qianqiu sank Shui Mingqing into the ground again and led the group of people into the thick white fog that was like a white wall. After returning to the underground transportation formation, the anxious group finally relaxed. The reason why they were anxious was because they were worried that Yu Qianqiu would harm them. Now that they had returned to their homeland, they were naturally relieved. Yu Qianqiu led the group back to the sacred palace that the underworld saintess had opened up. He gathered everyone's loot together, including the 99 sets of illustrations and jade archives that had been distributed. It wasn't that he was stingy, but he still had use for these things. If he were to purchase them on a large scale again, he was afraid that it would arouse suspicion. He kept all the immortal herbs. He did not take any of the spirit stones, transcendent artifacts, and the like. He directly threw them back into Nongju's hands. He looked around at the group and said, everyone, divide the remaining things among yourselves. You guys decide how you want to divide them. I won't interfere. It's best if you don't cause any trouble. These things are really nothing. There will be many more good things in the future. Everyone, please don't hurt our friendship. After all, we still have to work together in the future." Everyone laughed and expressed that there was no problem. Yu Qianqiu smiled and nodded. "There are some things that I don't know if I should say. With this transportation formation leading to the immortal realm, there's no point in everyone fighting over things in the human realm. Let's just return the human realm to the mortals. We from the cultivation world shouldn't interfere. If possible, it's best if everyone brings all the forces in your hands here to settle down. Also, the matter between you and the cultivation world of Wuxia should also stop. The so-called star bead has actually been brought back to the underworld by the Virgin of the Underworld. Even if you turn the cultivation world of Wuxia upside down, you won't be able to find it. Let's stop here. I'll take the immortal herbs with me. Everyone stay in the human realm and wait for my good news. I'll go back to the immortal realm first." As soon as Yu Qianqiu turned around, he suddenly turned back to the group and said, "By the way, you'd better take turns to guard here. Don't let anyone with bad intentions destroy the transportation formation. Otherwise your efforts will be in vain. At the same time, it will be convenient for me to find you. Also, about this trip to the immortal realm, just keep it to yourselves. Don't reveal it to your disciples or anyone else. This matter needs to be kept secret for the time being." After that, he flashed into the underground passage and disappeared. Everyone looked at each other for a long time. Nongzhu waved her arm and said, "Let's divide the things first." The quiet divine hall suddenly became lively. All kinds of voices mixed together. Finally, it was time to share the fruits of victory. The carvings on the dark stone walls seemed to be silently watching them. Yu Qianqiu went straight back to Utopia. Inside the ethereal palace, he called Bai Sujin and Chu Ping'er over. He took 2 valuable immortal herbs, the kind that had multiple immortal herbs, and gave the rest to the 2 girls. He solemnly instructed the 2 of them to personally watch over the planting of this batch of immortal herbs until they had harvested the seeds of the immortal herbs as reserves. Only then would he hand them over to someone else to watch over. When the 2 girls learned that this batch of immortal herbs came from the immortal realm, they were extremely shocked. Chu Ping'er's eyes flickered as she said, "You went to the immortal realm?" Yu Qianqiu laughed heartily and said, "Of course. Just wait. It won't be long before I bring all of you to the immortal realm for a stroll. However, this batch of immortal herbs is related to whether we can establish a foothold in the immortal realm. So, I'll have to trouble the 2 of you to cultivate them as soon as possible." There are illustrations of all kinds of immortal herbs in here. They record the growth habits of various immortal herbs. You can refer to them. He had just given the 2 sets of illustrations and jade archives to the 2 girls when someone outside reported that Zhang Peng had arrived. Chu Ping'er had wanted to stay with him for a while longer, but seeing that he had important matters to attend to, she had no choice but to go out with Bai Sujin. Zhang Peng was summoned by Yu Qianqiu himself. He took out 80 sets of illustrations and jade archives and gave them to Zhang Peng. He then asked Zhang Peng about the situation of Utopia's army. The master and disciple met and discussed for a long time before parting ways. When they left, Zhang Peng's expression was a little solemn, while Yu Qianqiu disappeared from the room. After returning to the divine ruin realm, Yu Qianqiu took a look at his surroundings. His gaze was fixed on the depths of the white fog, which was like a white wall. He had always wanted to see what was going on inside and whether there were any unknown secrets hidden inside. However, when he thought of how ferocious that huge snake was, he was somewhat apprehensive. In the end, he gave up and planned to go in and take a look when the conditions were ripe. After summoning Shui Mingqing out from underground, Shui Mingqing looked around and asked, "Where did they go?" Yu Qianqiu smiled as he took out 2 immortal herbs and handed them to him, saying, "Back then you gave me 1 immortal herb. Now I'm returning 2 to you. I didn't mistreat you, did I?" "Tri-element divine fruits," Shui Mingqing exclaimed. He took the 2 tri-element divine fruits and asked doubtfully, "Are you really giving them to me?" Yu Qianqiu immediately patted his chest and boasted, "I'm a person who doesn't care about anything, but I always keep my promises. I never go back on my word. I promised to give you the immortal herbs when I return to the sect, so naturally I have to fulfill my promise. Brother Shui, you don't have to doubt me." How could Shui Mingqing know that Huang Xiaolong was the kind of person who would flaunt his good points and eat them as if they were food? Shui Mingqing held the immortal herbs in his hands and fell silent for a long time. The rims of his eyes actually turned slightly red. Finally, he slowly raised his head and said, "I recognize you as a friend. I know you're a capable person as long as you don't mind." In his life, other than his parents, no one had ever treated him so well. 2 tri-element divine fruits worth 600 million divine-grade spirit stones were given to him just like that. He understood that he had avenged his fellow sect member's death. If he brought these 2 immortal herbs back with him, there was no doubt that the path of cultivation in Skyward Palace would be completely open to him. Little did he know that Yu Qianqiu was a person who was not afraid of spending money. As long as he could achieve his goal, forget 600 million, he would even spend 6 billion and 600 billion without hesitation. Of course, the premise was that the return must be greater than his investment. Otherwise, he would be very stingy, splitting a piece of spirit stone into 2 petals. Chapter 8:26. Stop being so disgusting. Let's go and get ready to leave the divine ruin realm. Yu Qianqiu patted him and pulled him along the white fog wall. Shui Mingqing looked in the direction and asked suspiciously, "Aren't you going to leave the divine ruin realm?" "I was hired by the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce. Naturally, I have to find them and go out together," Yu Qianqiu explained with a smile. The 2 of them flew all the way and began to chat. Under the guidance of Yu Qianqiu, the 2 of them discussed what to do after leaving. In less than half a day, the 2 of them finally caught up with Du Feng and the others who were following the fog wall in the opposite direction. Everyone had been worried that something would happen to him when he entered the depths of the fog. Now that he had returned safely, they were finally relieved. However, seeing that he had brought Shui Mingqing along, they all felt a little curious. No one knew the relationship between the 2 of them. Shui Mingqing, a disciple of Chaotian Palace. Everyone should have met before. Yu Qianqiu pointed at Shui Mingqing and smiled. "My new friend. If you don't mind, you might as well make friends." Spirit Cultivation Sect Disciple Du Feng. Mythical Fire Palace Disciple Hui Yunlong. 4 Links Chamber of Commerce's Mu Tianjiao. The 3 of them immediately introduced themselves politely, not daring to show the slightest bit of contempt. It had to be known that Shui Mingqing had gathered more than 300 sect disciples for revenge. It could be said that everyone was shocked. A person with such rallying power, even if he didn't have the support of the sect behind him, he would still be an extraordinary person. Everyone had been secretly eager to make friends with him, but they didn't expect to be called over by Yu Qianqiu. They all secretly admired Yu Qianqiu's communication skills. "Shui Mingqing greets my friends. I hope to have more contact in the future." Shui Mingqing cupped his fists. Although he didn't know the origin of the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce, he knew that the Spirit Cultivation Sect and the Mythical Fire Palace were among the top 50 sects in the immortal world. To be able to make such friends would not be bad for his future cultivation. Du Feng's eyes lit up and said, "To be able to meet such an outstanding talent like Brother Shui, I can't ask for more." Hui Yunlong smiled and nodded. "That's right, it's my honor. Since we are friends, there is no need to be so polite." Shui Mingqing waved his hand in shame. He secretly glanced at Yu Qianqiu, and his heart was filled with gratitude. If he hadn't been lucky enough to meet Yu Qianqiu, he would have lost his life long ago. How could he still stand here and make friends with the disciples of other big sects? Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, "Brother Du, Brother Yunlong, we're all friends now. I'm afraid I'll need your help with something when we get out." As he spoke, he raised his hand and pointed at Shui Mingqing. Everyone saw how Brother Shui gathered people to take revenge. Brother Shui's fellow disciples from Skyward Palace were all killed by Heartless Palace. "I'm afraid that after you go out, you will inevitably be scolded by your sect. I hope the 2 of you can use the influence of your big sects to support Brother Shui after you leave, so that he won't have a hard time explaining himself to the sect." Hui Yunlong immediately asked curiously, "Brother Shui has so many friends from other sects to help you. You can just pull some of them out, right?" Shui Mingqing smiled bitterly and said, "Brother Yunlong might not know, but those friends are from some small sections. Helping me take revenge this time is equivalent to offending Heartless Palace and a few other large sections. Fortunately, they are not famous, so no one knows them. How can I pull them out after I get out and let Heartless Palace see them and hold a grudge? Isn't that harming them? But the 2 of you are different. Both of you are disciples from big sections. Heartless Palace and the other sects will not become enemies with 2 big sects for the death of a few disciples who have not reached the celestial realm. Brothers, see if it is convenient for you. If it is not, then don't force yourself. I will think of other ways to deal with it." Actually, these words were taught to him by Yu Qianqiu along the way. Yu Qianqiu had been instilling a philosophy in him. This matter was a chance for him to make a name for himself. As long as he handled it well, he would fight for his own position in Skyward Palace. Otherwise, he would be like a flash in the pan. He could only be in the limelight for a while and then become a mediocre disciple of Skyward Palace again. Yu Qianzhou's guidance painted a beautiful prospect for Shui Mingqing, and it immediately caused Shui Mingqing's heart to palpitate with excitement. He asked Yu Qianzhou several times excitedly and apprehensively if it was really feasible. Yu Qianzhou only said one sentence, "Brother, I will do my best to help." He had seen Yu Qianzhou's ability and capability. After thinking for a while, Shui Mingqing immediately clenched his teeth and decided to go all out for the sake of his future. Du Feng nodded slightly and said, "I see. Brother Shui is affectionate and loyal. No wonder you can make so many friends. I, Du Feng, will do my best to help you in this matter." Hui Yunlong patted his chest and said, "Brother Shui, don't worry. I will definitely think of a way to give you face." Although Mu Tianjiao, who was at the side, also wanted to express her support, she knew that her 4 links Chamber of Commerce was really unknown. If she were to offer her support now, she would be suspected of benefiting from it. Therefore she simply remained silent. Yu Qianzhou looked at this scene with a smile. This was right. This was the effect he needed. If he wanted Shui Mingqing to play a role in Skyward Palace and help him, he first had to promote him and let him have a say in Skyward Palace. Otherwise he would not even have the right to speak, so how could he help him? As long as Shui Mingqing told this lie, it would be equivalent to boarding his pirate ship. If he wanted him to sit firmly on his pirate ship, he had to use fame and fortune to tie him down. Then he would work hard to row this pirate ship with him. Once a mediocre disciple had tasted the taste of fame and fortune, how could he bear to give up? Du Feng and Hui Yunlong did not know the inside story. They agreed to help because they wanted to use Shui Mingqing to improve themselves. After this, Shui Mingqing would definitely become famous, and it was more or less beneficial to be his friend. Besides, in the previous battle, the 2 clans were already at odds with the Heartless Palace. Whether they helped Shui Mingqing or not, the result would be the same. Both sides had benefits, but they did not know that Yu Qianzhou, who was smiling at the side, had planned everything, hiding behind the scenes and waiting to cut off the benefits that belonged to him. "Shui Mingqing thanks you in advance." Shui Mingqing cupped his fists and said, "If you need Shui Mingqing's help in the future, don't hesitate to ask. Friends should help each other. Brother Shui, you're too polite." Du Feng and Hui Yunlong were showing off their generosity. Yu Qianzhou waved his hand and scolded with a smile, "Stop disgusting people here. Everyone get ready. If you have anything to say, say it after leaving the Divine Ruin Realm." Hui Yunlong turned his head in shock and said, "You mean to leave the Divine Ruin Realm now?" Yu Qianzhou smiled and nodded. Du Feng immediately frowned and said, "There are still about 10 days before the closed-door training in the Divine Ruin Realm. If we leave so early, I'm afraid it won't be easy to report back to the sect. I will give you a good reason. You can tell your masters about it." Yu Qianzhou waved his hand and pointed around with a hint of pointing at the country. "Along the way you have all seen the situation. The various sects have already set off the wind of teaming up to snatch. Since we have already teamed up and I have helped you take revenge, you must also help me take revenge. In such a situation in the following days, it will definitely become more and more intense, setting off a storm of slaughter. I'm afraid it will be difficult to stop. The more people die, the easier it is for all kinds of treasures to be concentrated in the hands of a few people, and the easier it is for people to be jealous. If we don't go out now, when everyone's eyes turn red from killing, it will be difficult for us not to be implicated." Everyone was slightly shocked when they heard this. Thinking about it, it really was like this. Mu Tianjiao looked at Yu Qianzhou with a strange light in her eyes. She bit her lips slightly, and no one knew what she was thinking. Yu Qianzhou paused for a moment before continuing. "If I'm not wrong, once this precedent is set, I'm afraid that the next time the Divine Ruin Realm opens, the various sects will discuss the matter of teaming up before they even enter the Divine Ruin Realm, so that their disciples won't be at a disadvantage when they enter the Divine Ruin Realm. Actually, to those famous sects, losing a few disciples or suffering a few losses is a small matter. Losing face is a big matter. Brother Yu is right, such a thing may indeed happen." Du Feng looked at everyone with a serious expression and nodded. "Looks like we really have to go out early, what do you think?" "Then let's go." Hui Yunlong agreed. Mu Tianjiao bowed slightly and said, "I will listen to everyone." Shui Mingqing naturally did not have any objections, so the group immediately followed Yu Qianzhou and quickly flew towards the exit of the Divine Ruin Realm. Along the way they encountered several waves of robberies. When some people saw that the leader was Yu Qianzhou, they immediately turned around and ran in fright. Although some people had heard of how terrifying Yu Qianzhou was, they did not know Yu Qianzhou. However, they knew of the mythical Fire Palace and the Spirit Cultivation sect. When they saw the two sects, they quickly retreated, because they heard that the person who killed more than a dozen late-stage soul formation experts was with these two sections. Thus, the journey was surprisingly smooth. After flying at high speed for about an entire day, they finally arrived at the exit of the Divine Ruin Realm. In the end, they encountered a few sects that had teamed up to ambush at the exit. However, when they saw that it was the mythical Fire Palace and the Spirit Cultivation sect, they continued to hide. It was obvious that they also knew about the destruction of the Heartless Palace disciples. The group did not stop and quickly entered the rotating white light in the cave. After passing through the unknown space where streams of light flew, a huge suction force pulled them out of the passage. Outside the ruins of God, more than 10,000 rich and powerful sects had sent people to keep an eye on them. Although there were people who were truly concerned about the safety of the disciples in the sect, most of them had the intention of supervising them, afraid that the disciples in the sect would hide some treasures after they came out. Secondly, they were afraid that some disciples would escape in advance out of fear of danger. If such a situation really happened, the rich and powerful sects would not be lenient towards such disciples, because under the watchful eyes of the public, they would lose the face of the entire sect and would be ridiculed by the world. The entrance of the Divine Ruin Realm suddenly emitted a white light. Immediately, someone exclaimed, "Someone is coming out early." Everyone was in an uproar as they all stared at the place. The important figures of the various sects who were waiting in the shops immediately appeared in a flash. Tens of thousands of people floated in the air, all of them staring at the exit nervously with conflicted emotions. Actually, excluding those small sects that came for money, for many of the rich and powerful sects, although they had been making money, they did not lack money. The current gathering of the Divine Ruin Realm had actually become an occasion for the various sects to secretly compete for face. They were all eager to see others make a fool of themselves. Of course, if the joke fell on their own people, then it would not be funny at all. Chapter 8:27. However, not everyone who came out early was a coward who brought shame to the sect. There were also people who obtained rare treasures and came out early for safety reasons, but how could it be so easy to obtain rare treasures? Everyone had to wait and see what the truth was. There were some things in the world that were coincidental. Coincidences were rare, but there were always some. The leader of the Heartless Palace was an elder of the palace, called Lu Tao. Lu Tao happened to receive a message from the sect, asking him to contact the people of Skyward Palace and Mythical Fire Palace to refine a batch of immortal pills and immortal artifacts. Thus, Lu Tao sent someone to invite Skyward Palace's elder Yafuzi and Mythical Fire Palace's elder Hua Lianqing to the Heartless Palace's shop to discuss this matter. However, Lu Tao was used to being arrogant and domineering. During the discussion, he kept using the reputation of Heartless Palace as the #1 sect in the celestial world to lower the price. This was not a business discussion, it was clearly bullying. This made Yafuzi and Hua Lianqing very angry. However, the two sects were doing business with the people of the world, so they did not fall out. They could not make the decision, and they needed to ask for instructions before giving a reply. Lu Tao was very dissatisfied with this, and almost with a commanding tone, he told the two to immediately ask for instructions. One was the #1 alchemy sect in the celestial world, and the other was the #1 blacksmith sect in the celestial world. No matter how nice they were not afraid of him. Just as they were about to wave their sleeves and leave, they heard movement at the entrance of the Divine Ruin Realm. The three of them temporarily put down all the topics and flew out together. They flew to the sky outside the Divine Ruin Realm and silently looked down. Humph! Lu Tao pinched his beard and snorted. It's probably a coward who ran out early. Yafuzi and Hua Lianqing looked at each other. The latter was a hot-tempered person, and he had nowhere to vent his anger. Now that it was not related to business, he could not help but respond in an unfriendly tone. "Elder Lu, you need to be careful with your words. If the coward who ran out early is a disciple of your Heartless Palace, then it's a bit, hee. Hua Lianqing, what do you mean?" Lu Tao looked over coldly. Hua Lianqing said indifferently, "I didn't mean anything. I was just going along with what you, First Elder Lu, said. Could it be that you can speak but I can't?" Lu Tao squinted his eyes and there was killing intent hidden in his eyes. He said, "If the disciples of the Passionless Palace dare to do something that is cowardly and disgraceful, I will kill them myself." At this moment, a person beside him came over and said, "How can the disciples of Heartless Palace be afraid of death? Even if they came out early, they came out with rare treasures." Hearing their conversation, Qi Fengxing of Bada Chamber of Commerce came over eagerly. He seemed to want to flatter Lu Tao. But this flattery was really in the right place. Lu Tao slightly turned back to look at him with some appreciation in his eyes. However, as soon as he finished speaking, he saw Master Yafu suddenly turn around and stare at him. Master Yafu said indifferently, "Where did you come from? Is there a place for you to speak here?" Huo Lianqing also stared at him and said coldly, "Get lost." Qi Fengxing shrunk his neck, and the flattering smile on his face turned into embarrassment. He squeezed out a smile and nodded, then stepped back. He originally came with good intentions to flatter and hoped to get a relationship with the #1 sect in the celestial world. He really couldn't understand how he made the other two sects dislike him so much that they didn't give him any face at all. He didn't offend them, right? How would he know the story behind the three sects? Take care. Lu Tao called out to him. He glanced at Master Yafu and Huo Lianqing and sneered. "You two have quite a temper. Are you throwing this face at the Passionless Palace?" Then he looked back at Qi Fengxing and said, "You stay by my side. I'll see who dares to kick you out." The people nearby could tell that the three families were at odds with each other, and many people looked over. In all fairness, the strength of the mythical Fire Palace and the Skyward Palace was indeed inferior to the Heartless Palace. Huo Lianqing and Yafuzi would not go to the extent of fighting with Lu Tao for a person they did not even know. That would be too foolish. However, the two of them stared at Qi Fengxing with sharp eyes. Qi Fengxing didn't know whether to leave or stay. He had a bitter face and was about to cry. If he knew that flattering would result in this, he wouldn't have come even if he was beaten to death. He cupped his hands in fear and said, "Junior won't disturb the three seniors anymore." Before he finished his words, Lu Tao made a nasal sound and said, "Who allowed you to leave? Didn't you come here to talk about cooperation with the Passionless Palace? Why are you in a hurry to leave?" He was clearly competing with Huo Lianqing and Master Yafu. He wanted to slap their faces. Talk about cooperation with the Passionless Palace? Qi Fengxing was stunned. After he reacted, an ecstatic expression appeared on his face. He bowed and stood behind Lu Tao and said, "Junior won't go anywhere. I'll listen to Senior's instructions." He finally figured it out. As long as he got close to the Passionless Palace and became their partner, whoever touched him would be the same as touching the Passionless Palace. At that time, not many people would dare to touch him. Lu Tao nodded in relief and glanced at Huo Lianqing and Master Yafu with a mocking look. The two of them snorted coldly and didn't say anything. They just cast a pitiful look at Qi Fengxing, which made Qi Fengxing's heart tremble. However, many people from small sects cast envious looks at Qi Fengxing. At this moment, the entrance of the Divine Ruin Realm spat out a white light, and a series of figures flashed out. It was Yu Qianqiu and the others. Under the berating of the golden-robed guard at the entrance, more than 70 people quickly walked out to the field under the watchful eyes of the crowd. The ushers of the mythical Fire Palace, the spiritual Cultivation sect, the Skyward Palace, Mu Bing, and Nan Tianlong also quickly rushed to the field and asked with concern, "Why is there only one person left from the Skyward Palace? Could it be that these few sects found rare treasures and returned together?" Lu Tao immediately looked up to the sky and laughed heartily. Qi Fengxing also laughed softly behind him. In the pavilion at the top of the mountain above the cave, the wind was leisurely, and the field of vision was wide. Wu Xiong, the commander of the external affairs of the Immortal Palace, was sitting in the pavilion and drinking. After hearing the arrogant laughter, his gaze shot over like a sharp knife. Immediately, Lu Tao's laughter stopped abruptly and he quickly shut up. Wu Xiong glanced at the field at the foot of the mountain. After discovering that it was Mu Tianjiao and the others, his gaze paused for a moment, and then he continued to drink. Although Lu Tao did not dare to laugh loudly again, he could not help but reveal a mocking expression as he stared at Huo Lianqing and Yafuzi. The two of them looked at each other and rushed into the field. Du Kairin, the elder of the spiritual Cultivation sect, also could not help but flash down. After the three of them came down, Hui Yunlong and Du Feng walked over together, bowed and greeted, "Father." After Du Kairin and Huo Lianqing looked at each other, they glanced at the people of the two sects, and found that there was not a single person missing. The two of them could not help but be puzzled. Du Kairin raised his hand slightly, and Huo Lianqing nodded. He asked with a sullen face, "Yunlong, what is the meaning of this? Why did you come out early? Could it be that you did something that is greedy for life and disgraces the sect?" Looking at the actions of the two, it seemed that the relationship between the two sects was not ordinary. Du Feng and Huo Yunlong looked at each other and smiled. Huo Yunlong replied, "Father, you misunderstood. This trip to the Divine Ruin Realm was quite fruitful because the situation inside has changed greatly. So, I can't explain it clearly in a moment or two. I'll explain it to you later. In short, you just have to wait and watch the show. Seeing that the two of them could still smile, the two fathers were already relieved. When they heard that the harvest was quite fruitful, their faces revealed expressions of relief. In fact, Du Feng and Hui Yunlong were cousins and their mothers were sisters. The reason why the two of them took the risk to enter the Divine Ruin Realm was discussed by their parents. It was mainly to fight for a better opportunity for their sons to develop. This was why the mythical Fire Palace and the spiritual Cultivation sect teamed up in the Divine Ruins realm. However, Du Kairen and Hua Lianqing were still a little confused. They looked at each other, not knowing what was going on. On the other side, Yafuzi and a disciple of the Skyward Palace looked at Shui Mingqing with ashen faces, causing Shui Mingqing to be a little flustered. He did not know how to say the words that were about to come out of his mouth. Yafuzi asked the disciple beside him, "What's his name?" The disciple quickly bowed and replied, "His name is Shui Mingqing." Shui Mingqing? Yafuzi thought for a while and seemed to vaguely remember this name. Then he asked in a deep voice, "Shui Mingqing, let me ask you, why did you come out alone? Could it be that you were afraid of death and escaped in advance?" At the end of his sentence, his expression was already stern. Everyone's gazes were also fixed on him. Lu Tao, who was in the air, was sneering. Yu Qianqiu was speechless when he saw Shui Mingqing's terrified expression. He sighed in his heart. He was still lacking. He was lacking experience. Du Feng and Hui Yunlong exchanged glances when they heard this. They hurriedly walked over and bowed to Yafuzi together. Du Feng was even more emotional as he said, "Senior, the feat of your esteemed sect's brother Shui Mingqing is enough to make the Skyward Palace proud. How can he be afraid of death?" Hui Yunlong also nodded and said, "This junior dares to say that none of the hundreds of thousands of disciples from various sects who entered the Divine Ruins realm can compare to brother Shui Mingqing. At least the two of us are inferior." Du Feng immediately said, "Speaking of which, our two sects still have to thank brother Shui Mingqing. If not for him, I'm afraid our two sects would have suffered heavy losses." Mu Qinjiao, who was talking to Mu Bing, also walked over and bowed to Yafuzi. "Although our Four Links Chamber of Commerce is a small and insignificant chamber of commerce, we still have to thank Senior. If not for the help of your esteemed sect's disciple, this junior's small chamber of commerce would not have been able to escape safely." In an instant, everyone's eyes focused on Shui Mingqing. Even Wu Xiong, who was in the pavilion at the top of the mountain, stopped drinking and looked over. When Du Kairen and Hua Lianqing heard that a young disciple of the Skyward Palace had done a great favor for their two sects, they hurriedly walked over. Chapter 828. In just a short while, the commotion had suddenly become huge. Yafuzi was stunned, a little confused. The anger that had just risen in his heart had been replaced by confusion, but he didn't know how to ask. Shui Mingqing stood there shyly, his head slightly drooping, a little afraid to raise it. He had never endured so much attention in his life, and the pressure was too great. His palms and his sleeves were already sweating. He was truly the center of attention. "Brother Yu, won't there be any loopholes if we do this?" he asked via voice transmission. Yu Qianqiu smiled as he looked around. This was exactly the effect he wanted. He immediately transmitted his voice back, "Worrying about anything is unnecessary. Just move forward bravely towards your goal. When you truly become a superior, you will realize that as long as you succeed, the false will be true, and others won't even have the right to question you. This is the difference between ordinary people and superior people. Ordinary people are always worried about being exposed when they lie, but superior people eat lies like a meal, and through lying they train their fiery eyes and indestructible body. If you are always afraid of wolves in front and tigers behind, then there will never be a day where you can stand out." "Brother Yu is right." Shui Mingqing smiled bitterly and said, "But I won't hide it from Brother Yu, I am really a little scared right now." "What do you mean a little scared? You are obviously very scared." Yu Qianqiu said disdainfully, "What are you afraid of? Let me tell you, there are two kinds of people in this world. The more scared they are, the braver they become, and the more scared they become, the more timid they become. The former become famous and the latter live a mediocre life. Think about it yourself, which kind of person do you want to be?" Perhaps he found that his tone was a little too harsh, but the other party still wanted to retreat at the last moment. How could this be? However, Yu Qianqiu still softened his tone and said calmly, "Think about it, there are many young disciples like you in the immortal world, But how many of them have an opportunity like you? It's hard for them to have an opportunity to bear this kind of pressure in their lives. This is a hurdle, a chance to hone you. Straighten your chest and face it bravely. Once you cross it, you will get a chance to train, and you will have the capital to succeed. After you experience this, you will find that many of the things that seemed scary before are actually nothing much. Other people's vision, mind, spirit, and courage are all trained like this. What are you afraid of? This unforgettable reprimand made Shui Mingqing suddenly feel enlightened. His eyes gradually became firm and he replied in a deep voice, "Brother, you don't say any more, I understand." Yu Qianqiu was gratified and said, "It's good that you understand. If you want to retreat again, think about how miserable you were when you were being chased by the disciples of Heartless Palace in the ruins. If you were to encounter such a situation again, it would be impossible for someone to save your life all the time. You would have to rely on yourself. In life, you will either be on the chopping block or fish on the chopping block. You should constantly strive to improve yourself. What's a mere pressure worth mentioning?" Shui Mingqing gradually raised his slightly lowered head. His eyes were clear and firm, and his fists that were tightly clenched in his sleeves slowly loosened. After Yu Qianqiu noticed this change, the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile, and he didn't say anything else. If this still couldn't make him pull himself together, then he was at most a piece of trash that couldn't be helped and should be silenced. The people who had been silently observing Shui Mingqing finally saw his appearance clearly. He stood there calmly, facing the elders of the sect with a calm expression. His slightly lowered gaze expressed his respect for the elders of the sect, but it also revealed a strong sense of self-confidence. It was rare for a young disciple who had yet to ascend to the immortal realm to have such determination under the attention of so many people. Many people's eyes lit up slightly. A trace of surprise flashed through Master Yifuzi's eyes. He realized that this young disciple, whose name he couldn't even remember, was actually a hidden sword. When he lowered his head, there was no difference between him and many ordinary young disciples, so much so that even Master Yifuzi had misjudged him. But when he raised his head slightly, that kind of strong self-confidence was definitely not something the other young disciples could compare with. Seeing the surprise in the eyes of the others, Master Yifuzi looked at Shui Mingqing again. Although Shui Mingqing was just standing there without saying a word, there was no doubt that his confident silence told everyone that he hadn't done anything that would bring shame to the sect. There was no need for him to defend himself. That would be an insult to him. There was no need to explain anymore. Master Yifuzi firmly believed that Shui Mingqing would not lose face for Skyward Palace. However, he wanted to know what had happened in the ruins of the gods and why he had come back alone. Du Feng and Hui Yunlong looked at each other with admiration in their eyes. If the two of them were faced with such a situation, they definitely wouldn't be able to handle it as easily as Shui Mingqing did. They would definitely be anxious to defend themselves. But look at him, that kind of bearing, this was the charm of a person. No wonder he could get 300 disciples to help him take revenge with just a call. Among his peers in the celestial world, Shui Mingqing was the only one who could do this. This friend was worth it. Du Karen's eyes flashed as he looked at Shui Mingqing and asked Du Feng, "Du Feng, what did this Skyward Palace disciple do for us? Tell us so we can thank him." After Du Feng bowed to his father, he looked at Shui Mingqing and sighed, "Brother Shui, what a heroic deed." Because the disciples of the Palace of Heaven had picked a 3 elements immortal fruit, they attracted the covetous eyes of the Heartless Palace disciples. After a series of attacks, he was the only one left among the disciples of the Palace of Heaven that had entered the divine ruin realm. What? Master Yifuzi's expression changed. He stared at Shui Mingqing and shouted, "The others are all dead?" Everyone was in an uproar as they looked at Elder Lu Tao of Heartless Palace in the air. Lu Tao slowly crossed his arms, a hint of pride on his face as he sneered without saying anything. Shui Mingqing's expression was solemn as he cupped his hands and said, "Disciple is incompetent and failed to protect the other disciples. Disciple is willing to accept any punishment without complaint." On the side, Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up as he thought to himself, "I didn't misjudge him. Sure enough, this kid is worth teaching. It seems like this show can go smoothly." Master Yifuzi was furious, but he suppressed it when he looked at Shui Mingqing. He looked up at the sky and shouted, "Lu Tao, a disciple of your Heartless Palace dared to kill a disciple of Skyward Palace. How are you going to explain this?" Lu Tao looked down and sneered, "Master Yifuzi, don't tell me you don't know what's going on in the ruins of the gods. Don't tell me that your disciples have never killed disciples of other sects in the ruins of the gods. In the ruins of the gods, the disciples of each sect rely on their own abilities. Fighting and killing are common. If the sects don't let it go after that then it will be very lively. I'm afraid there will never be a day of peace in the celestial world. Du Kairen grabbed the furious Master Yafuzi and glanced at Lu Tao in the sky. Brother Yafuzi, don't be impatient. There must be a sequel to this. Why don't you listen to it first? Then he turned to Du Feng and said, what happened next? Du Feng said in a deep voice, Brother Shui fought to the death with only one person left and finally escaped from the encirclement of the disciples of Heartless Palace. As for what happened after he escaped, we don't know either. Later on, my spirit cultivation sect, Mythical Fire Palace, and the Four Links Chamber of Commerce also met the disciples of Heartless Palace. They joined forces with the other 6 sects and nearly 200 people wantonly robbed and killed in the ruins of the gods. When they saw our 3 sects, they didn't put us in their eyes at all. They actually surrounded our 3 sects and wanted to destroy our 3 sects for the treasures. On the side, Huo Lianqing immediately frowned and stared at the sky with a sneer, as expected of a disciple of Heartless Palace. They are really arrogant. Lu Tao, who was in the sky, snorted coldly as if he didn't care at all. Instead he was proud of it. Continue? Du Kairen frowned. Du Feng nodded and said, at this critical moment, Brother Shui suddenly appeared. However, he didn't come alone this time. Instead, he was filled with the flames of revenge and contacted friends from over 300 sections. Over 300 people rushed over together and surrounded the disciples of Heartless Palace and the other 6 sects. Hui Yunlong, who was at the side, excitedly chimed in with his fists. Thus, our 3 sects, along with the 300 people that Brother Shui brought, worked together and defeated the 7 sects led by Heartless Palace. In the end, the 7 sects were completely annihilated. None of them were lucky enough to escape. That was called killing to my heart's content, ha. The air and the ground instantly boiled up. No one thought that this group of young disciples would actually put on such an exciting show in the ruins of the gods. They really couldn't tell. The sneer on Lu Tao's face gradually froze and darkened. Everyone started whispering to each other. No one would think that Du Feng and Hui Yunlong were lying, and it was impossible for them to lie in such a situation. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Shui Mingqing, who was standing silently without making a fuss. Everyone couldn't believe that such a young disciple who hadn't reached the immortal stage had actually made friends with more than 300 sections. What kind of concept was this? The most commendable thing was that these friends from more than 300 sects could actually stand up for him when he was in trouble. Their friendship was not shallow. He had friends in more than 300 sects. Right now he was only at the soul formation stage. If he waited until his cultivation level increased in the future, in time his appeal would be incredible. Many people looked at Master Ye with faint envy in their eyes. They didn't expect that there would be such a talent among the rising stars of Skyward Palace. Who would dare to say that someone who could make so many friends had nothing to do with their ability and luck? Shui Mingqing still stood there calmly, as if all the admiring gazes had nothing to do with him. In fact, he was excited, but he didn't dare to show it on his face. In his mind, he recalled the desolate and helpless scene in the valley, and his eyes became calmer and colder. Chapter 829. The more he acted like this, the more everyone revealed looks of praise. This kind of disciple really made their sect proud. Why didn't he come out? Huo Lianqing looked up at Lu Tao, who had a dark expression on his face and couldn't help but laugh. This is interesting, really interesting. There are actually people who like to slap their own faces. This is the disaster caused by arrogance. Everyone naturally knew who he was talking about. They looked at Lu Tao, who had a dark expression and looked like he wanted to eat someone. This was indeed too embarrassing. Lu Tao didn't have the face to stay here anymore. Moreover, the disciples who entered the divine ruin realm were all dead, so there was no point for him to stay any longer. Lu Tao looked at the few sects gathered below with resentment. He wanted to say something, but he realized that what he could say was blocked by what he had said before. If he continued to be angry, he would only be humiliating himself. He snorted coldly and turned into a beam of light that flew into the distance. Qi Fengxing, who was beside him, was dumbfounded. He slowly hid in the crowd in the air so that he wouldn't be too conspicuous. The remaining Heartless Palace disciples didn't have the face to stay here anymore. They all flew back to their shops silently. Lu Tao could leave, but they still had to stay to make a deal. Awesome. Huo Lianqing looked at Master Ye and laughed. Brother Master, this disciple of your sect is really proud. A hint of pride flashed across Master Ye's face. He stared at Shui Mingqing seriously and said, Why don't you defend yourself? Shui Mingqing took out the 2 3-element celestial fruits from his storage bracelet and offered them with both hands. He said woodenly, "Disciple is useless. All the brothers who came with me were sacrificed, and only Disciple came back alive. I couldn't get enough benefits for the sect and only brought back 2 3-element celestial fruits. Disciple really doesn't have the face to defend myself, and I'm afraid I'll lose the face of Skyward Palace. Elder, please punish me." Disciple will not have the slightest complaint and is willing to accept any punishment. His words of self-blame made everyone sigh incessantly. To be able to avenge his fellow disciples in that kind of situation, and even bring back 2 valuable immortal herbs alone, what else could they say about having such a disciple? If the Palace of Heaven still blamed him for this, it would be too unreasonable. Such a disciple would only be meritorious and not make any mistakes. Master Ye's expression changed. He silently put away the 2 3-origin celestial fruits in his hand. He stared at Shui Mingqing and pursed his lips as he said, "Whether you're punished or not, someone from the sect will deal with it when we return. Which faction are you from?" Shui Mingqing respectfully replied, "Disciple's aptitude is poor, and I'm temporarily cultivating with my fellow brothers and sisters. I'm not qualified to enter any branch to cultivate." A hint of joy flashed on Master Ye's face as he suppressed his voice and asked, "Since that's the case, are you willing to join my lineage and be my disciple?" Shui Mingqing looked at Master Yafu with an extremely excited expression. He nervously said in disbelief, This disciple naturally wishes for it. It's just that this disciple's aptitude is stupid and I'm guilty. I'm afraid, since you're willing then it's settled." Yafuzi immediately made the decision. Damn it. He's already a senior disciple, so what's the point of being guilty? Yu Qianqiu looked at Shui Mingqing with a smile. He found that his efforts had not been in vain. He had finally gotten off to a good start. Anyone who knew a little about the Palace of Heaven knew that disciples who joined the Palace of Heaven would gather together to cultivate. Only after their cultivation broke through to the immortal realm would they be picked by the various lineages. It was very rare for someone to be picked at the soul formation stage. Generally, only those with exceptional aptitude would be picked and nurtured by the various lineages. In fact, most of the sects in the celestial realm used this method to nurture their disciples. Those who knew the situation knew that elders like Master Yafu already had a large number of disciples and grand disciples, and they had long since stopped accepting disciples. Now that he had accepted another disciple, Shui Mingqing's seniority in Chaotian Palace would be very high. Many celestial-level masters in Chaotian Palace would have to call him martial uncle and martial ancestor. This was really a meteoric rise. In fact, from Master Yafu's point of view, such an excellent disciple was rare in the world. Regardless of how talented Shui Mingqing was, he would be proud to say that he was his disciple in the future. If he didn't take this opportunity to take him, he was afraid that once he returned to the sect, he would definitely be snatched away by some thick-skinned old fellows. This was called the pavilion closest to the water enjoys moonlight first. Shui Mingqing felt like he was dreaming. He didn't know what to do for a long time. Master Yafu's expression gradually became ugly. If he said that he would accept Shui Mingqing but Shui Mingqing didn't agree, then he would lose a lot of face. "Brother Shui, hurry up and greet Master," Du Feng anxiously urged. Hui Yunlong also excitedly waved his arms. "Brother Shui, hurry up and greet Master." Shui Mingqing immediately reacted. He took a deep breath, lifted the hem of his clothes and solemnly knelt on the ground. "Disciple Shui Mingqing greets Master." Then he bowed and kowtowed 3 times. Master Yafu was very happy but his face remained calm. He raised his hand and said, "Get up." Shui Mingqing stood up. He could no longer hide the excitement in his heart. He really didn't expect that by following Yu Qianqiu's instructions, there would be a reaction so quickly. He had actually become the disciple of an elder of Skyward Palace. Was this a dream? Du Kairen and Huo Lianqing looked at each other, then they cupped their hands and laughed. Congratulations to Brother Yafu for accepting an outstanding disciple. This is really worthy of celebration. Master Yafu smiled and cupped his hands. The 2 of you are too polite. Whether he is an outstanding disciple or not will depend on his future efforts. Many people who were familiar with Master Yafu also congratulated him. Master Yafu smiled and cupped his hands in a reserved manner. Yu Qianqiu's eyes narrowed slightly. He should be happy for Shui Mingqing, but he couldn't bring himself to be happy. He thought about the disciples who died in battle for the honor and interests of their respective sects in the ruins of God. Glory always belonged to the living. As for the dead, the past was the past. But who would want to die? They had no choice. Even if they dragged out an ignoble existence, only death awaited them. Mu Qianjiao silently peeked at Yu Qianqiu. She had experienced things in the ruins of God, and with a woman's innate intuition, she had a faint feeling. She felt that everything Shui Mingqing had now was given to him by this man. What she had was also given to her, and it was the same for Du Feng and Hui Yunlong. While everyone was enjoying the joy of success, he stood silently at the side. Mu Qianjiao really wanted to walk to his side and accompany him. She wanted to accompany this mysterious and lonely man who came from an unknown place. However, people couldn't live in this world without any face. Furthermore, she was a woman, so she could only silently pay attention. After exchanging greetings, everyone was about to leave when Yu Qianqiu frowned and glanced at Mu Qianjiao. He turned his head and coughed. Brother Du, Brother Yunlong, have you forgotten the promise the three sects made when we joined forces? Mu Qianjiao hurriedly waved her hands at the crowd. No need. Our Four Links Chamber of Commerce has already taken advantage of you. We don't dare to be greedy. Yu Qianqiu raised his brows. How can this be called greedy? Didn't we do anything? Although our Four Links Chamber of Commerce is small in number, we still have to agree on what we have agreed upon. Whether we will do it or not, we still have to say something. What's the meaning of leaving without saying a word? In the air, Wan Ling and the three elders of the Eternal Ancient Chamber of Commerce looked at each other. Ever since Yu Qianqiu came out, they had been paying attention. Seeing that Yu Qianqiu actually dared to show disrespect to the mythical Flame Palace and the Spirit Cultivation sect, they became more and more curious. Du Feng and Hui Yunlong immediately thought of this and hurriedly ran back with a face full of embarrassment. They cupped their hands in apology. Du Feng smiled bitterly. Brother Yu, don't blame me. It wasn't intentional. I just forgot for a moment. Please wait a moment. Under the curious gazes of the crowd, the two of them hurriedly ran back to their father's side and whispered in each other's ears. Du Kairen and Huo Lianqing looked at Yu Qianqiu with surprise. After that, Du Kairen looked at Huo Lianqing and smiled. Each generation is stronger than the previous. Looks like the immortal world is welcoming an era of geniuses. Huo Lianqing nodded. We naturally have to honor our promise. We won't take advantage of this. He waved at Du Kairen. Brother Du, let's go have a drink. Juniors' matters can be left to them. That's what I was thinking. Du Kairen laughed. The two of them flashed away. Shui Mingqing whispered a few words to Master Ye. After getting his approval, he walked over and cupped his hands. Brother Yu, Brother Du, Brother Yunlong, Miss Mu, I'll go back with Master first. If there's anything, you can find me at the Skyward Palace's shop. We've gone through life and death together. If there's a chance, let's not be estranged. Master Ye nodded with a faint smile. This disciple's character was not bad. No wonder he had so many friends. He chuckled. Shui Mingqing, what do you mean by these few days? In the future, you can invite more friends to our Skyward Palace. Our Skyward Palace will not neglect our friends. The four of them saluted Master Ye. Many thanks, Senior. Master Ye looked around with a smug expression, then turned into a streak of light and flew away. Shui Mingqing cupped his hands towards them apologetically. He was especially calm and collected as he looked at Yu Qianqiu. The two of them quickly exchanged a few words through voice transmissions before Shui Mingqing flew away. After greeting each other, the three parties headed to the Four Links Chamber of Commerce's shop. Looking at the empty shop, Du Feng and Hui Yunlong subconsciously exchanged a glance. Then they swiftly sorted out the things they had obtained from their trip to the Divine Ruin Realm. According to the previous agreement, they had to split the loot equally, but Mu Qianjiao was adamant. Unable to dissuade Du Feng and Hui Yunlong, the Four Links Chamber of Commerce's share was about 20 billion divine-grade spirit stones. Mu Bing and Nan Tianlong exchanged a glance. They didn't expect the Four Links Chamber of Commerce to join hands with the mythical Fire Palace and Spiritual Cultivation sect in the Divine Ruin Realm. They didn't expect to obtain so many treasures. From the beginning to the end, Mu Bing was looking at his daughter with a complicated expression. Chapter 830. After distributing the loot, Du Feng and Hui Yunlong bid their farewells. They had just returned and had their own matters to deal with. The only problem left was to pay the commission to the people they recruited. When they hired these people, Mu Qianjiao had said that she would share 1/10 of the Divine Ruin Realm's estimated value. Including Mu Qianjiao, there were a total of 17 people who had returned. 1/10 of the 20 billion divine grade spirit stones was equivalent to 2 billion. As for those who were already dead, they naturally had no right to share. 100 million divine grade spirit stones for each person was hard to believe for the group of rogue cultivators. At the same time, they were a little apprehensive, wondering if the Four Links Chamber of Commerce would honor their original promise. This was not a small sum of money. However, Mu Qinjiao was indeed a man of her word. After calculating with everyone, she pondered for a moment before asking, "Everyone knows my Four Links Chamber of Commerce's difficulties, we can't afford to take out cash. Whether everyone is willing to take out immortal herbs of equal value or wait for the items to be sold, it's up to everyone. I, the Four Links Chamber of Commerce, will not force you." Everyone exchanged glances. Yu Qianqiu stared at them indifferently, saying, "I'm not a greedy person. The fact that I'm able to get so many items this time is entirely due to the mythical Fire Palace and spiritual cultivation sect. I don't want the small change after the items are sold, just give me 100 million divine grade spirit stones." Under his malicious gaze, everyone's heart skipped a beat. Immediately, someone said meekly, "I'm not greedy either, but I don't want to wait. Can you give me 100 million divine grade spirit stones now?" Mu Qinjiao looked meaningfully at Yu Qianqiu, then smiled at that person, saying, "No problem." She then picked out an immortal herb of equal market value and handed it to that person. After both parties returned the Jade Archive, that person immediately ran away without looking back. With someone taking the lead in completing the transaction, the others immediately made the same request. Mu Qinjiao did not make things difficult for them, quickly fulfilling her promise. In the blink of an eye, the group dispersed. At this time, only Yu Qianqiu and the silent Tao Zhong were left among the people Si Tong had hired. Mu Qinjiao looked at Tao Zhong and smiled sweetly. In the ruins of God, Tao Zhong had stood up several times in times of crisis to help stabilize the hearts of the people. If not for him, this team would have been scattered before Yu Qianqiu returned. "I really have to thank you this time, otherwise, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to return." Mu Qinjiao bowed. "If you have any requests, please tell me. As long as it's within my ability, I'll do my best to satisfy them." Tao Zhong pondered for a moment before slowly saying, "I wish to end my life as a loose cultivator. I wonder if I can join your Four Links Chamber of Commerce?" Everyone in the shop was stunned at the same time. After Mu Qinjiao recovered from her surprise, she looked at her father. Mu Bing recovered and nodded with a smile. "If you don't mind my Four Links Chamber of Commerce being down and out, I welcome you to join us." Tao Zhong immediately smiled and cupped his hands. "Thank you for taking me in, President. From today onwards, I, Tao Zhong, will wholeheartedly serve the Four Links Chamber of Commerce." When the Four Links Chamber of Commerce was in dire straits, there was still someone willing to join them. Mu Bing and the other two immediately felt their spirits rise. Nan Tianlong even walked over and patted Tao Zhong's shoulder, saying excitedly, "Well done. We'll be a family from now on." Watching the lively atmosphere in the shop, Yu Qianqiu smiled faintly. "This matter has come to an end. I should be able to get the 100 million divine grade spirit stones commission in a few days' time. This one will take his leave first." He cupped his fists at them and strode out of the shop. "Yu Qianqiu." Mu Qinjiao stopped him. Under the astonished gazes of the others, she walked to Yu Qianqiu's side and bit her lip. "I want to take up some of your time. There's something I want to discuss with you." "What is it?" Yu Qianqiu stood at the door and asked suspiciously. Mu Qinjiao turned to look at her father, then gestured outside. "Can we find a quiet place to talk?" "What the hell is this girl doing?" Yu Qianqiu paused for a second, then shrugged nonchalantly. "Do as you wish." Mu Qinjiao leaped into the air and Yu Qianqiu followed closely behind her. The two of them quickly flew over the spacious plaza filled with rows of shops and entered deep into the boundless undulating stone mountains. Mu Qinjiao only landed on a towering stone mountain when she could no longer see the prosperity behind her and the desolation in front of her. Yu Qianqiu paused in midair, then landed on the stone hill with a puzzled expression. The petite Mu Qinjiao stood silently with her back facing him, her indigo dress fluttering in the wind, her silky hair fluttering in the wind. Yu Qianqiu's vigilant gaze swept over the rocky mountains around him, wondering why this woman brought him to such a remote place. If he was molested, no one would hear him even if he screamed himself hoarse. "Chi-chi." Mu Qinjiao, who had turned around, could not help but giggle when she saw him like that. "Why are you so cautious? With your ability, are you afraid of me?" Yu Qianqiu withdrew his thoughts, coughed, and said, "Miss Mu, what exactly do you want to talk about? Why do you have to come here to talk?" I can see that you are not someone who lacks money. Mu Tianjiao stared at him and asked, why do you want to help me? Yu Qianqiu was startled and did not know whether to laugh or cry. I don't lack money? Are you kidding me? I am simply too short of money. If not for money, why would I enter the divine ruin realm? Mu Tianjiao smiled and shook her head, saying, answer me first, why are you helping me? Yu Qianqiu was speechless as he pointed around and said, Miss Mu, don't tell me you dragged me here just to ask this? Don't change the subject, answer me, Mu Tianjiao pressed. Yu Qianqiu touched his forehead and said weakly, all right. First, I did it for money. Second, although I am a kind-hearted person, I did not deliberately help you. I just went with the flow. Mu Tianjiao was silent. After a long time, she stared at him with sparkling eyes and bit her lip. Then what do you think of me? Yu Qianqiu's mouth opened slightly, stunned on the spot. Finally, he realized something. The corner of his mouth twitched and he said with a bitter smile, Miss Mu, I think you may have misunderstood. The reason why I helped you is not because I have any thoughts about you. To be honest, I just admire you for being so strong as a woman, so I helped you. There is absolutely no other intention. Mu Tianjiao's expression changed slightly and she said with a forced smile, so I was thinking too much. It seems that my charm is not enough to attract you. You can't say it like that. Yu Qianqiu spread his hands and frankly said, to be honest, you are very charming. I am very willing to take you to bed and molest you, but I believe you won't be willing to abandon you afterwards. I also don't want to do such a thing to a woman like you. These words were indeed frank, a bit too frank, causing a trace of embarrassment to flash across Mu Tianjiao's face. However, she was also a decisive person. She forced herself to calm down and said, let's get back to the main topic. Is there a possibility that I can keep you in our 4 links chamber of commerce? Yu Qianqiu was speechless. Mu Tianjiao immediately waved her hand and explained, don't misunderstand. It's not a matter between a man and a woman. I purely hope that you can join our 4 links chamber of commerce. Yu Qianqiu looked at her suspiciously and asked, why do you want me to join the 4 links chamber of commerce? Because our 4 links chamber of commerce is in urgent need of talents to help us quickly get out of our predicament. I believe that you are one of the people we need, Mu Tianjiao said sincerely. Now that they were talking about serious matters, Yu Qianqiu immediately became impolite. He raised his eyebrows and said, you think too highly of me? What do you think the 4 links chamber of commerce has that can attract me to join? Mu Tianjiao bit her lip and said, you can state the conditions you want, and then we'll see if we can satisfy you. I don't need to state any conditions. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said with a smile, because I don't have the ability you speak of. I just want to be a free loose cultivator. Miss Mu, did you call me here mainly to discuss this? Can't you reconsider? As soon as the words left her mouth, she saw him shake his head and refuse without hesitation. Mu Tianjiao smiled bitterly and said, it seems that our 4 links chamber of commerce will have a hard time retaining capable people. Yu Qianqiu smiled noncommittally. He wasn't the kind of person who would be easily moved by others' sincerity. It depended on what the matter was. He didn't care whether the 4 links chamber of commerce was big or small. The main thing was that he couldn't submit to others anymore. Moreover, this was a small 4 links chamber of commerce. This wasn't a platform for him to display his ambitions. Actually, I have a pretty good suggestion. Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, you should continue to maintain contact with the Spirit Cultivation Sect and Mythical Fire Palace. I believe it will be of great help to your 4 links chamber of commerce. I'm afraid I can't reach them. Mu Tianjiao shook her head and smiled bitterly. This isn't your style, Miss Mu. How would you know if you don't try? Yu Qianqiu cupped his fists and said, all right, I still have matters to attend to. I'll take my leave first. With that said, he flew off into the sky without looking back. Mu Tianjiao looked at the departing figure and a haggard expression suddenly appeared on her face. After a moment of loss, she took a deep breath and gathered her spirit to fly back. At the entrance of the 4 links chamber of commerce, Du Feng and Hui Yunlong arrived at almost the same time. The two of them looked at each other in surprise. Mu Bing quickly walked out and bowed. Esteemed guests, please come in. Du Feng glanced inside and waved his hand. Chairman Mu is too polite. I just happened to be passing by. I still have some matters to attend to. I'll come again in the future. On the side, Hui Yunlong directly asked, Chairman Mu, where's Yu Qianqiu? Where did he go? Before Mu Bing could reply, someone already said, Yu Qianqiu has already left. The few of them turned and saw Mu Tianjiao smiling. Du Feng and Hui Yunlong's eyes lit up at the same time. After exchanging some pleasantries, Hui Yunlong asked again, Miss Mu, do you know where Yu Qianqiu went? I saw him heading in this direction. He should still be in this area. Mu Tianjiao said hesitantly. Hui Yunlong looked around and immediately cupped his fists and said, Then I'll go look for him. I'll take my leave first. With that he left. Du Feng also cupped his fists and bid farewell. Chapter 831. Watching the two of them leave, Mu Bing asked doubtfully, Why are they looking for Yu Qianqiu? The spirit cultivation sect and the mythical fire palace had probably also taken a fancy to him. Mu Tianjiao shook her head with a complicated expression, Who knows? The father and daughter walked back into the shop and began to help Nan Tianlong arrange all kinds of immortal herbs. As all kinds of immortal herbs were placed on the shelves, it also attracted people from various sects to stop. The father, daughter, and disciple trio began to welcome the guests with smiles. After the hundreds of thousands of disciples from various sects were gone, the entire square seemed a lot more deserted. There was no longer the bustling crowd before the opening of the Divine Ruin Realm. The Skyward Palace's shop fully displayed the characteristics of the #1 alchemy sect in the immortal world. They sold all kinds of immortal pills and purchased all kinds of immortal herbs. Yu Qianqiu wandered outside the shop for a while. This was the second time he had come to the Skyward Palace's shop. The last time he had only passed by, but this time he walked straight in. The shopkeeper first sized up his cultivation and realized that he couldn't see through it. He quickly walked over and asked with a smile, What immortal pill are you looking for? We have all kinds of immortal pills here. I'm looking for Shui Mingqing. Yu Qianqiu pouted and stared at the few people inside with a smile. Master Ye was talking to a few disciples of the Skyward Palace, and Shui Mingqing was among them. Hearing that someone was looking for Shui Mingqing, the few people inside turned around. The shopkeeper knew that there was nothing for him to do, so he moved aside. Shui Mingqing was slightly startled. He didn't expect Yu Qianqiu to find him so early. He turned back to look at his new master. The few of them moved aside and Master Ye walked over to Yu Qianqiu with a smile and said, You are Yu Qianqiu? My disciple has already told me about your performance in the Divine Ruin Realm. Speaking of which, the Skyward Palace has to thank you. Yu Qianqiu bowed respectfully and said, Senior, you flatter me. Your disciple and I are already friends of life and death. It would be too polite to say thank you. As long as Senior doesn't despise me for being a rogue cultivator, Junior will be satisfied. Master Ye smiled and nodded slightly. After listening to Shui Mingqing talk about Yu Qianqiu's powerful means in the Divine Ruin Realm, he knew that once everyone in the Divine Ruin Realm came out, this child would immediately become famous. He turned around to look at his beloved disciple, Shui Mingqing, and couldn't hide the admiration in his eyes. The more friends he had, the better his disciple's future would be. He could not help but feel a little proud. Fortunately, he was the one who led the team to host the Divine Ruins Realm. Otherwise, Shui Mingqing would definitely be snatched away by other old fellows to be his disciple. When the news spread, those old guys from the Palace of Heaven would definitely be envious. My Skyward Palace also accepts outer disciples. If you are willing, I can recommend you, Master Yafuzi said in a good mood. Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands and said, Thank you for your kindness, Senior, but Junior already has a master. Although my master is also a rogue cultivator, it's not good for him to join another sect. Master Ye let out an oh and said, So that's how it is. For you to have such ability with your spirit-severing cultivation, your master must not be a nobody. Why don't you tell me? Maybe I know your master. Like hell you know him. Yu Qianqiu respectfully said, My master is just a nobody in the immortal world. Even if I tell you, Senior definitely won't know him. Master Yafuzi stared at him for a while and slowly asked, It's not bad for a nobody to be able to teach a disciple like you. I presume your master is a hermit. May I know which immortal mountain your master lives in seclusion? Seeing that Yu Qianqiu didn't want to say it clearly, Master Yafuzi was a bit suspicious. He wanted to ask someone to investigate. Yu Qianqiu immediately sensed the deeper meaning in his words. He smiled bitterly and said, It would be great if I could occupy an immortal mountain and live in seclusion. Then I wouldn't have to look for my master this time. What? Your master is missing? Master Yafuzi asked. To be honest, my master's whereabouts have always been uncertain. However, he often goes to the netherworld with some chamber of commerce to earn some spirit stones, but I don't know why. He has been in the netherworld for a long time, but he hasn't come back. After saying that, Yu Qianqiu bowed deeply and said, "This junior came to the Skyward Palace's shop to look for brother Shui Mingqing. In truth, I have something to ask of you, senior. I hope senior can give face to your disciple and help me this once." Shui Mingqing was stunned. This was different from the version they had agreed on. Little did he know that Yu Qianqiu was already cursing in his heart. This old ghost was really suspicious. He made me want to change the script. Master Yafuzi looked at Shui Mingqing and said with a faint smile, "My palace of heaven is indebted to you. If you have anything to say, just say it." "Thank you, senior." Yu Qianqiu said respectfully, "It's like this. I heard that all the major sects have people coming and going to the netherworld to trade. Junior wants to ask Senior to let Palace of Heaven send people to trade with the netherworld to bring Junior along. Junior wants to go to the netherworld to inquire about Master." He had also thought it through. He had originally come to the celestial world to find Bai Changchun. Although he was tempted by the divine ruin realm, he still had to find a way to find out if the old man was dead or alive. Otherwise, his heart would always be half-tangled. Master Yafuzi was solemn when he heard this. He silently looked at Yu Qianqiu for a while and said, "The netherworld is not like the celestial world. It is vast and there are countless heroes there. It has always been chaotic. Going to the netherworld to trade is a very dangerous thing. Since your master has been gone for a long time. With all due respect, I'm afraid the hope of him coming back is very slim. Are you sure you want to take the risk? A teacher for a day is a father for life." Yu Qianqiu nodded with a firm look in his eyes. The doubts in Master Yafuzi's heart disappeared. He was a little touched and said, "It seems that your master didn't accept you as a disciple for nothing. However, I'm afraid it's not the time to go to the netherworld. The situation in the netherworld is quite tense. Not only my palace of heaven, but even the entire celestial world doesn't have anyone going to trade with the netherworld for the time being. If you want to go to the netherworld, I'm afraid you have to wait until the situation in the netherworld calms down a little." Not only Yu Qianqiu but everyone present looked at each other. They didn't seem to know what he meant. Yu Qianqiu curiously asked, "Did something happen in the netherworld?" Master Yafuzi looked around at everyone and said, "I'm afraid only some of the higher-ups of the various sects know about this, but it doesn't matter if I tell you. Just treat it as a way to broaden your horizons. Don't spread it after this. There are 72 worlds in the human world, and one of them is a forbidden area of the immortal and netherworld realms. Although I don't know the reason, the Celestial Emperor and the Netherworld Emperor forbid the people of the immortal and netherworld realms from interacting with that world. That place is the ancient battlefield where the immortal and netherworld realms fought against the Myriad Swords Demon Monarch. Have you all heard of it?" Everyone replied in unison, "Yes." Yu Qianqiu's heart skipped a beat. The place Master Yafuzi was talking about was obviously where he came from. Could the situation in the netherworld be tense because the Eastern Holy Land was broken and the people trapped there returned? Master Yafuzi waved his hand and laid down a soundproof barrier in the shop before continuing. After the ancient battle, although the Myriad Swords Demon Monarch was defeated, many people from the immortal and netherworld were trapped by the heaven and earth universe formation laid down by the Myriad Swords Demon Monarch. Those experts from the immortal and netherworld were trapped for more than 100,000 years. It wasn't until recently that the heaven and earth universe formation was broken that those trapped immortal world experts returned through the netherworld and brought back shocking news. Master Yafuzi's voice paused, and a faint sigh appeared on his face as if he was feeling very emotional. Everyone was silent as they waited for him to continue. However, he seemed to be reminiscing about something and couldn't extricate himself from it for a long time. Yu Qianqiu cursed in his heart, but he honestly asked, "Senior, what kind of shocking news is it?" Master Yafuzi came back to his senses and shook his head with a sigh. It said that a peerless expert called Bai Changchun appeared in that world. He could freely enter and exit the heaven and earth universe formation that trapped the experts from the immortal and netherworld. What's more terrifying is that 2 underworld generals and 2 immortal monarchs from the immortal world joined forces, but they weren't a match for him. 2 underworld generals and 1 immortal monarch died at his hands, and 1 was seriously injured. Ah! Everyone in the shop couldn't help but cry out. There was actually someone in the mortal world who could fight 4 immortal monarchs alone. It was too frightening. This news was indeed shocking, and everyone didn't even dare to breathe loudly after hearing it. *CK. Just this outdated news? Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He respectfully asked again, "Senior, what does this have to do with the tense situation in the netherworld?" Master Yafuzi looked at him and nodded. "Of course it's related. After that person called by Changchun defeated 2 underworld generals and 2 immortal monarchs, he charged into the netherworld. This time he did something unimaginable. He was simply too daring. He actually charged into the Minghuang mountain and wanted to challenge the netherworld emperor. Everyone couldn't help but gasp. In everyone's eyes, the netherworld emperor was a top-notch expert who was on the same level as the immortal emperor. Someone actually dared to challenge the netherworld emperor? Oh my god. Yu Qianzhou's heart was pounding. His legs were a little weak and the muscles on his face were twitching. He sighed helplessly in his heart. This old fellow really dared to do anything. He was so arrogant that he actually dared to challenge that legendary figure. That was the strongest and most mysterious expert in the entire netherworld. He suddenly thought of how he had lost contact with Bai Changchun. He instantly became nervous. His face was slightly pale as he asked, "What happened to that person?" Master Yafuzi glanced at him and didn't think much of it. He just thought that Yafuzi was frightened. When he first heard the news he was also shocked. He shook his head and sighed. This person was really very strong. When he killed his way to the Minghuang mountain, he finally alerted the 4 strongest netherworld generals of the 12 remaining on the Minghuang mountain. In the end, the 4 netherworld generals couldn't defeat him even when they teamed up. He fought the 4 netherworld generals for a long time, and both sides actually came to a draw. Because of this, the most mysterious netherworld emperor of the netherworld royal palace finally appeared. Yu Qianzhou's heart trembled. He anxiously asked again, "What was the result?" The netherworld emperor is indeed the netherworld emperor. He is indeed the most powerful emperor in the netherworld. Master Yafuzi couldn't help but clench his fists as he said vehemently, "It is said that after the netherworld emperor appeared, he was extremely furious. It was the first time in many years that someone dared to attack his netherworld royal palace. He immediately ordered the 4 netherworld generals to retreat and personally fought with that person called by Changchun. 3 moves. Just 3 moves. Just 3 moves. The 3 earth-shattering moves immediately severely injured by Changchun, who the 4 netherworld generals had been fighting for a long time. One could imagine how terrifying the netherworld emperor was. After being severely injured, the enraged netherworld emperor chased after Bai Changchun. It could be said that the entire netherworld was shocked. The entire netherworld once again witnessed how terrifying the netherworld emperor was. Chapter 832. The breathing in the shop suddenly quickened as everyone revealed expressions of shock and yearning. All of them were imagining the peerless demeanor of the netherworld emperor. Yu Qianzhou swallowed his saliva to moisten his dry throat and asked with difficulty, "Was Bai Changchun killed by the netherworld emperor?" Master Yafuzi slowly shook his head. If he was really killed, then the situation in the netherworld wouldn't be so tense. That person's methods are truly outstanding. Although he couldn't even withstand 3 moves from the netherworld emperor, he was able to resist the netherworld emperor's pursuit and luckily escaped into the boundless forbidden area of the netherworld. If it wasn't for the mysterious forbidden area of darkness that even the netherworld emperor was wary of and blocked his pursuit, the furious netherworld emperor wouldn't have let him go. Bai Changchun would have died without a doubt. Yu Qianzhou's eyes lit up as he forcefully controlled his excitement and asked in a suppressed voice, "So that means that Bai Changchun didn't die at the hands of the netherworld emperor and escaped in the end?" "You can say that," Master Yafuzi muttered, "but whether he's alive or dead is unknown. It is said that Bai Changchun was severely injured by the netherworld emperor before he escaped into the mysterious forbidden area. In addition, just think about the strangeness of that mysterious place. Even the netherworld emperor was forbidden from entering, so there must be something terrifying there that outsiders don't know about. Bai Changchun entered while heavily injured, so his chances of survival are very slim." Damn it. Yu Qianzhou's mouth twitched and he was speechless. This old fellow had tossed his heart around like a small boat in a raging sea, going up and down. One moment he saw hope and the next moment he destroyed it. It was as easy as blowing soap bubbles. What a joke. Since that person was forced into the mysterious forbidden area by the netherworld emperor, why is the situation in the netherworld still so tense? Yu Qianzhou powerlessly asked the question in his heart. Yafuzi was silent for a moment before explaining, because of Bai Changchun's unexpected appearance, the netherworld emperor's favored concubine, Madame Blackpool, is extremely furious. With one order, the netherworld army that shakes the entire netherworld is interrogating all those who aren't from the netherworld. Many people from the immortal world who went to the netherworld to trade have been implicated. Your master hasn't returned for a long time. I'm afraid it has something to do with this matter. Yu Qianqiu fell silent. He was conflicted about whether Bai Changchun was dead or alive. Why did he lose contact with the silver ball that he was carrying? Could it be that the boundless and mysterious forbidden land in the underworld really had some unusual mysteries that could cut off the connection between him and the silver ball? This was the first time he had encountered something like this. In the past, no matter where he was, he could always maintain contact with the silver ball. After thinking about it, his gaze gradually became firm. He had always been very confident in Bai Changchun. As long as there was no definite news of his death, then everything was possible, because he was the one and only legend in the world. Bai Changchun. Even if he went to the netherworld now, he would be powerless. The most important thing at the moment was to strengthen himself. If Bai Changchun was really dead, then he had to live well. After all, someone had to take revenge for the old man. After all, the old man only had one disciple. Although the old immortal emperor of the netherworld was very terrifying, he had to work hard. He was not a gentleman if he did not take revenge. However, it seemed that he had no chance of defeating the emperor of the netherworld in this life. The corners of Yu Qianqiu's mouth stiffened as he sighed in his heart. He would think about revenge later. The old man was very lucky and would definitely not die. Master Yafuzi stared at the silent Yu Qianqiu for a while and said with a faint smile, "Yu Qianqiu, you are also considered an outstanding talent of the new generation. It is not a long-term plan to wander around the immortal world alone. I have a suggestion. I don't know if you are willing to listen to it." Yu Qianqiu recovered and hurriedly bowed. "Senior, please speak, Junior is listening." Master Yafuzi nodded and said with a smile, "Your master's life and death are unknown. I suggest that you first join my Chaotian Palace and become an outer disciple of my Chaotian Palace. If your master is still alive, I am confident that I can persuade your master to join my Chaotian Palace. When the time comes, your master and disciple will be reunited, and he will definitely not say anything about you. What do you think of this suggestion?" Ever since he learned about Yu Qianqiu's extraordinary ability in the ruins of God, he had already wanted to rope him in. A disciple of the younger generation like him would definitely have limitless achievements in the future. If he did not take advantage of this opportunity to rope him into the Chaotian Palace, he would definitely regret it in the future. That was why he bowed to Yu Qianqiu with his status as an elder of the Skyward Palace and invited him over and over again. If Yu Qianqiu was a useless person, he probably wouldn't even bother to look at him. Yu Qianqiu pondered for a moment before cupping his hands and saying, "Junior is very grateful for Senior's favor. However, Junior's master's life and death are unknown. If I arbitrarily join the Chaotian Palace at this time, I am afraid that I will not be able to raise my head in the future. What's more?" The smile on Master's face turned slightly cold, and his eyes flickered as he said, "What's more?" His tone was also a little heavy. Shui Mingqing looked at the two of them nervously, afraid that his new master would kill Yu Qianqiu if he was unhappy. It should be known that Yu Qianqiu had promised to continue supporting him secretly in the future, which was very important to him. Although he was only a lowly disciple in the Chaotian Palace before, he knew that the sect was not as peaceful as it seemed on the surface. In fact, there were endless fights for power in the dark. Moreover, he had been promoted from the lowest disciple to the disciple of an elder, which would definitely attract a lot of covetous eyes. There would definitely be people who would think of ways to make things difficult for him. As time passed, he was afraid that he would not be able to survive smoothly. As the saying went, it was easy to dodge a spear in the open, but difficult to guard against a stab in the dark. If someone wanted to deliberately harm him, it would be impossible for Master to always stay by his side. Now, if Master was his backer on the surface, then Yu Qianqiu was his backer in the dark. He had seen some of the things that Yu Qianqiu had shown in the ruins of God, so he was very confident in Yu Qianqiu's mysterious background. He had a feeling that what Yu Qianqiu had shown was only the tip of the iceberg, and that Yu Qianqiu could give him a lot of help. There were many elders like Master in the Chaotian Palace, and the disciples of these elders had been in the Chaotian Palace for many years. In addition to their high cultivation, they had established a good foundation. Master didn't have any foundation in the Chaotian Palace, and his cultivation wasn't very good either. At present, Yu Qianqiu was the only place he could borrow strength from, so he didn't want anything to happen to Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu naturally heard the displeasure in Master's tone, so he calmly explained, "Senior might not know this, but when my master was still alive, he often talked about how he hoped that one day he could establish his own chamber of commerce and end his identity as a rogue cultivator. This can be said to be a wish of my master. As his disciple, I have the responsibility and obligation to fulfill Master's wish. After saying that, he secretly sent a voice transmission to Shui Mingqing, asking him to come out and smooth things over. Master looked him up and down and raised an eyebrow. You mean you want to establish your own chamber of commerce in the immortal world? Yes. Yu Qianqiu replied with a firm look. Master sneered. Kid who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, do you know how much it costs to establish a chamber of commerce? Even if you succeed in establishing it as you wish, can you run a chamber of commerce with your cultivation base that hasn't reached the immortal realm? I'm afraid that you won't be able to keep it. Where there's a will, there's a way. Yu Qianqiu replied in a sonorous voice. What a shameless boast. As soon as Master finished his sarcastic words, Shui Mingqing stepped forward and bowed to him. Master, disciple has a suggestion, but I don't know if I should say it. Master was slightly taken aback. He looked at his new disciple and his expression softened. What good suggestion do you have? This was a hint for Shui Mingqing to speak. Shui Mingqing immediately said respectfully, Brother, you saved this disciple's life in the divine ruin realm. This disciple really doesn't want to see a gap between him and our Chaotian palace. This disciple thinks that Master should give him a grace period. For example, give him 3 years. If he can't run a chamber of commerce in 3 years, this disciple is willing to do his best to persuade him to join our Chaotian palace. Master frowned slightly, but Yu Qianqiu shouted, Okay, and solemnly promised, 3 years it is. If I can't run a chamber of commerce in 3 years, there's no need for Brother Shui to persuade me. I will voluntarily join the Chaotian palace and work for it. Shui Mingqing looked at him with a burning gaze and played along. Brother Yu, I'll say the ugly words first. Since you've already promised me, you are not allowed to join other sects within these 3 years. Otherwise don't blame me for falling out with you. Deal? Yu Qianqiu promised. Shui Mingqing turned to Master and bowed. What do you think, Master? Master, please make the final decision. Master looked at Shui Mingqing for a while and slowly closed his eyes. Then it settled. He waved his hand and removed the soundproof barrier in the shop. Thank you, Master. Shui Mingqing bowed. The moment he bowed, he suddenly found that he had become much bolder. In the past, he wouldn't have had the guts to speak to the elders of the sect like this. At this moment, a person passing by on the street outside the shop glanced inside. Then he turned around and walked in. This person was none other than Du Feng of the Spirit Cultivation sect. He walked over with a smile and bowed to Master. Greetings, Senior. Then he cupped his hands to the 2 people beside him. Brother Shui, Brother Yu. Master smiled faintly. So it's a child from the Du family. What brings you here? This junior is looking for Brother Yu. I have something to discuss with him. Du Feng looked at Yu Qianqiu and said, I wonder if Brother Yu is free? He and Hui Yunlong met outside the 4 Connection shop. In fact, his goal was the same as Hui Yunlong's. They were both looking for Yu Qianqiu. It was just that Hui Yunlong said it, but he didn't. After learning from Mu Tianjiao that Yu Qianqiu was still in this area, the 2 cousins went their separate ways to look for him. Hui Yunlong used the spirit of foolish old man moving the mountains to search for Yu Qianqiu on the streets, while Du Feng quickly thought of where Yu Qianqiu might go, so he found Yu Qianqiu 1 step ahead of Hui Yunlong. Chapter 833. Specifically looking for me? Yu Qianqiu looked at Du Feng curiously before bowing to Master Ye. Then this junior will take his leave first. Master Ye nodded slightly without saying a word. Yu Qianqiu and Du Feng left the Palace of Heaven's shop. Before leaving, Yu Qianqiu and Shui Mingqing looked at each other tacitly. According to his previous plan of coming to the Palace of Heaven's shop, Yu Qianqiu originally wanted to rely on his relationship with Shui Mingqing to visit the Palace of Heaven as a guest or something. At the same time, he wanted to encourage Shui Mingqing to find a way to steal some pill recipes for him. However, Master Ye's carrot and stick made him understand that the old foxes of the Palace of Heaven were not easy to deal with. It would not be easy to steal pill recipes from the Palace of Heaven. Although he had a way to encourage Shui Mingqing to take the risk, it had taken a lot of effort to place a spy in the Palace of Heaven. It was better not to act rashly without confidence. Otherwise, he would have to accompany the spy he had nurtured. At the same time, the Palace of Heaven would definitely not let him off. After thinking about it again and again, he quickly made another decision. If he operated in the open and above-board way, he would still have a way to get what he wanted. Just like what he had said to Master Ye, He wanted to establish his own chamber of commerce in the celestial world. He wanted to openly develop his own forces. With a chamber of commerce as a cover, he could smuggle those people from the cultivation world into the celestial world and settle down. Seeing the two of them leave, Master Yi slowly turned to look at Shui Mingqing and said, "It seems that our palace of heaven is not the only one who wants to pull him into the sect." Shui Mingqing gritted his teeth and replied, "Disciple believes that he will abide by the 3-year agreement. Since you can pull over 300 people from the ruins of God to work for you, then Master believes in your foresight," Master Yi said lightly. Master Yafuzi faintly said, "Seeing how calm he is when dealing with me, perhaps he will have some achievements in the future. I support you to deepen your relationship with him in the future. Perhaps he might be able to help you in the future." Shui Mingqing was stunned. He bowed and said, "Disciple understands." At this time Yu Qianqiu was standing on top of a mountain with Du Feng. Looking around at the undulating granite mountain range where not even a blade of grass grew, Yu Qianqiu was a little speechless. This guy's actions were similar to Mu Tianjiao's. Could it be that he also wants me to join the spirit cultivation sect? "Brother Du, you brought me here. I consider Brother Du a friend. If Brother Du has anything to say, you can say it directly. There's no need to stand on ceremony," Yu Qianqiu said. "Brother Yu is a straightforward person." Du Feng first affirmed, then looked at him with a humble face and said with a smile, "I wonder if Brother Yu has any plans after the Divine Ruin Realm gathering?" Yu Qianqiu looked around and asked, "From what Brother Du said, do you have any good suggestions?" "I won't beat around the bush so that Brother Yu won't like it." Du Feng turned around and walked to the edge of the mountain. He looked into the distance and said, "You should know that there are many sects in the immortal world with a long history. Each sect has many direct descendants like me and Yunlong. It's because there are too many direct descendants that it's difficult to stand out in the sect. If we don't produce results that everyone is convinced of, even if my father and Yunlong's father is an elder in the sect, it's not easy to forcefully support us." Yu Qianqiu walked to his side and stood side by side with him, admiring the unique mountain scenery. He said with a smile, "Your relationship with Hui Yunlong seems to be not ordinary. Our mothers are blood-related sisters. My mother is his mother's older sister. We are cousins, it's just that our sects are different." Du Feng explained honestly. Yu Qianqiu nodded and said, "So that's how it is. No wonder the relationship between your fathers is not ordinary. You two cousins risked your lives to enter the Divine Ruin Realm together. Is there a reason? Or does it have something to do with the results that everyone is convinced of?" Du Feng nodded and said, "Our age and cultivation are about the same. Both of us have our fathers to rely on in the sect, so it's not difficult for us to raise our cultivation to the immortal realm. What's difficult is to stand out among the many direct descendants, then have a good start and walk to a high position in the sect step by step. After some discussion, our parents spent a lot of money to barely get the position of deputy deacon. But because we haven't made any contributions to the sect, there are many people in both sects who are quite dissatisfied. That's why Yunlong and I went to the Divine Ruin Realm. We were able to come back safe and sound and bring back a lot of things without losing a single person. With our father's help, our positions as deputy deacons should be in the bag." A trace of disdain flashed in Yu Qianqiu's eyes. Needless to say, from the situation in the Divine Ruin Realm, it could be seen that the disciples who accompanied the two into the Divine Ruin Realm were probably carefully selected by Du Kairan and Huo Lianqing to be cannon fodder. At the critical moment, they would definitely protect the two young masters with their lives. If anything happened to the two of them, it was likely that those disciples would die even if they went out. But this was also understandable. Who told them to have a good father? Yu Qianqiu asked indifferently, "How high is the position of deputy deacon? How high is the position?" "Brother Yu, that's an interesting analogy." Du Feng couldn't help but laugh as he looked at him. Fortunately, he was already used to the other party asking retarded questions in the Divine Ruin Realm, so he was already used to it. He immediately replied with a smile, "The division of positions in the Celestial Realm is actually pretty much the same. They are apprentice, disciple, deacon, branch leader, hall master, protector, elder, consecrator, and sect master. Before Shui Mingqing became a disciple of Senior Yafuzi, cultivators like him who were at the soul formation stage and below were collectively referred to as apprentice in the various sections. There are actually many so-called deputy deacons, who are the people who manage the apprentices." "Oh," Yu Qianqiu said, "so deputy deacons are apprentices who have a little bit of power for the first time. They are still quite a distance from the real deacons." The major sects in the celestial realm have been established for many years, so they naturally have a set of rules. They can't be accomplished overnight. Basically, they progress step by step. Otherwise, with so many people in each sect, it will be easy for things to get messy. Du Feng shook his head and smiled bitterly. Although it's just a small deputy deacon, I've already told Brother Yu before that there are many direct descendants in each sect, so everyone's eyes are on each other. A small deputy deacon can be given to a person with no background, but no one is willing to fall into the hands of someone with a background. This is because a person without a background will only be a deputy deacon if they become a deputy deacon, but it's different for those with a background. They have a bright future, which is the starting point for them to rise up. I'm sure Brother Yu already understands what I mean. I thought that direct descendants like you who have a backer would have a very comfortable life, but it seems that the internal strife between the various sects is very fierce. Yu Qianqiu chuckled. In each sect, the higher up you go, the fewer positions there are. For people of the same generation, if you fall one step behind, it's very likely that you will fall behind, and in the end, you will be suppressed by others for the rest of your life. An immortal cultivator's life is endless, and no one is willing to be suppressed by others for the rest of their life. In a sect, you don't have a choice. You may not be the only one being suppressed. Even your future children and grandchildren will be implicated, so it's inevitable that you will fight in the dark. Du Feng sighed. TSK. You can imagine that behind the scenes of these famous sects, it's not as simple as fighting each other. Maybe it's a fight to the death. Yu Qianqiu suddenly said strangely, do the founding masters of your sects just sit back and watch their children kill each other? Don't they come out and do something? Du Feng tilted his head and looked at him. He slowly said word by word, a sect can't rely on one founding master to maintain its normal operation. It might be possible in the short term, but it won't last long. In any big sect, good and bad are intermingled and good and bad are mixed together. If you want a sect to last, you need a large number of elite disciples to support it. In a big sect, if you can't even win the fight for the top position, how can you be considered an elite disciple? On the other hand, if you can stand out in a big sect, you definitely won't be useless. Survival of the fittest. Yu Qianqiu softly muttered. He frowned and seemed to be thinking about something. After a while, he asked suspiciously, Brother Du, you've said so much, but I don't understand what it has to do with me. What does it have to do with you looking for me? Yes. Du Feng turned to face him and said with a sincere look, other than the apprentices in charge of the deputy deacon, they are also allowed to develop a certain proportion of outer disciples. Of course, those with a high cultivation level are not people who can develop at my level. These people are the foundation of the deputy deacon's achievements. Once I become a deputy deacon, my father can only use his power from the top. He can't send people to help me openly because everyone's eyes are on me. If I can achieve outstanding results as a deputy deacon, when my cultivation level breaks through to the immortal realm and becomes a disciple, my father is confident that he can fight for the position of deacon for me. If everyone works together, we can improve one level at a time. After talking for a long time, I finally understand what you mean. Yu Qianqiu rubbed his chin and said, if I'm not wrong, you want to develop me as an outer disciple after you become a deputy deacon? That's right. I've seen Brother Yu's ability with my own eyes. I'm afraid that no cultivator below the immortal realm is a match for you. If I have Brother Yu's help, in a situation where everyone has the same level of competition, I'm already half a step ahead. Du Feng couldn't hold back his excitement, speaking out his final thought. Halfway through his excitement, he noticed that Yu Qianqiu's face showed a lack of interest, as if he wasn't the least bit interested. Du Feng suddenly came to a realization. Brother Yu, don't misunderstand, I absolutely have no intention of controlling you. Developing you as an outer disciple is to prevent people from gossiping in our spirit cultivation sect. You and I are still brothers. Once I achieve enough results, if you no longer want to stay in the spirit cultivation sect, us father and son have the ability to return your freedom. At the same time, my father will give you 10 billion divine grade spirit stones as a reward. Brother Yu, what do you think? Chapter 834. 10 billion? My current net worth is at least 2 trillion. Yu Qianqiu muttered in his heart for a while. He raised his hand and patted Du Feng's shoulder, then turned around with his hands behind his back. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. Brother Du, I appreciate your kindness, but I really can't help you with this. To tell you the truth, Brother Du, Elder Yafuzi tried to persuade me to join the ranks of the outer disciples of the Skyward Palace. Du Feng was taken aback. He then remembered that Shui Mingqing had experienced the Divine Ruin Realm and had a good relationship with Yu Qianqiu. It was not difficult for Yufuzi to understand that Yufuzi wanted to rope him in. After all, everyone wanted to recruit talents. He frowned and asked, "Brother, you agreed?" "No." Yu Qianqiu turned around and shook his head. "I rejected him," which made Elder Yufuzi unhappy. Fortunately, Brother Shui came forward to smooth things over. Otherwise, I'm afraid I won't be able to leave Skyward Palace's shop. Du Feng's eyes were filled with confusion. He slowly asked, "Since Brother Yu has already rejected me, why won't he help me? Is it because the money is too little?" "Money is not a problem. This can be discussed again." "It's not about money." Yu Qianqiu smiled indifferently. "Although I'm a rogue cultivator, I have a master. How can I join another sect without permission? Besides, when I rejected Elder Yufuzi, I promised him that if I want to become an outer court disciple of another sect, Skyward Palace will be my first choice." Du Feng stood in silence for a long time. After a long time he smiled bitterly. "I understand. Elder Yufuzi is really good. Forget it, I won't force Brother Yu. It's not that I'm forced, I'm just powerless." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and smiled. "But then again, if Du Feng needs my help, I don't necessarily have to become an outer court disciple of the Spirit Cultivation sect. If there's anything you need, just let me know. As long as it's within my power, I won't refuse." Du Feng's eyes lit up. "Good. Brother Yu's words are enough. I trust Brother Yu. Hee. Help each other, help each other." After laughing for a while, Yu Qianqiu coughed and said, "Brother Du has come at the right time. I have something to ask Brother Du, please do not hesitate to enlighten me." "Go ahead." Du Feng raised his hand without hesitation. Yu Qianqiu immediately said with a serious expression, "I talked to Elder Yufuzi about establishing a chamber of commerce before. He sneered at me for overestimating myself and said that establishing a chamber of commerce would cost a lot of money. I wonder what the expenses are." Du Feng looked him up and down in disbelief. "Do you want to establish your own chamber of commerce? Please enlighten me." Yu Qianqiu nodded. Du Feng blanked for a moment, then shook his head and sighed, "Brother Yu is a man with lofty ambitions, how could he submit to others? I was too impulsive just now. Speaking of establishing a chamber of commerce, it does cost a lot of money. Just obtaining the recognition from the Chamber of Commerce Alliance requires 10 billion divine-grade spirit stones to register, and this is the cheapest way to do it." Yu Qianqiu was dazed for a second. "I still need to register? Just the registration cost 10 billion divine-grade spirit stones, so expensive? Could it be that there are different levels of registration?" Du Feng looked at Huang Xiaolong as if he was looking at a monster. He paused briefly before explaining, "If you spend 10 billion divine-grade spirit stones to register, you can only obtain the permission to operate one type of business. For example, if your registered Chamber of Commerce deals in immortal pills, you are only allowed to sell immortal pills, not other businesses. Otherwise, you will be heavily punished by the Chamber of Commerce Alliance. However, if you are willing to spend 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones to register, you can operate any business that the Immortal Palace allows." "Spending 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones just for registration?" Yu Qianqiu exclaimed, "Is this the Chamber of Commerce Alliance or the Bandit Alliance? Can I not register?" Du Feng subconsciously looked around, a wry smile on his face. "Brother Yu, be careful with your words. The Chamber of Commerce Alliance was established by the Immortal Palace to manage all the businesses in the immortal world. If you want to open your own business in the immortal world, you have no choice but to pay the money. Once you're discovered, I'm afraid, no one in the immortal world would dare to go against the Immortal Palace. In fact, if you don't have the Chamber of Commerce Alliance's permission, no one would want to do business with you." Yu Qianqiu was rendered speechless. He stood in silence for a long time, gritting his teeth. "Black. Is 2F** King black? It seems like it's impossible to have your own Chamber of Commerce in the immortal world without paying the money." "You can say that." Du Feng pondered for a moment, then said, "This amount of money might seem like a lot, but if a Chamber of Commerce manages it well and can last for a long time, it can't be considered a loss. Paying this amount of money, you can enjoy the Chamber of Commerce Alliance's protection to a certain extent. For example, other chambers of commerce wouldn't dare to swindle or deceive you when doing business with them. Keeping one's word is the Chamber of Commerce Alliance's ironclad rule. If anyone dares to violate it, they will be severely punished. Secondly, the Chamber of Commerce Alliance will hold regular gatherings, which is a good opportunity for various chambers of commerce to earn some money. So that's how it is. After a round of persuasion, Yu Qianzhou's anger finally subsided. What made him depressed was that he wanted to establish a chamber of commerce that could do any kind of business, but where was he going to find 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones? It was true that his net worth was high, but he didn't have that much money. If he were to sell a large batch of immortal herbs now, it would definitely arouse suspicion. How should he solve this problem? Looking at the frowning Yu Qianzhou, Du Feng probed, "Brother Yu, are you worried about spirit stones?" "Yes, sir. This is not a small amount of money, it's very difficult." Yu Qianzhou sighed, shaking his head. All of a sudden, his eyes lit up, looking at Du Feng. "I wonder if Brother Du has enough money on hand? If you do, can you temporarily lend me 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones? Don't worry, I'll think of a way to return it to you in no time." 50 billion. Du Feng jumped in fright, his face twitched. "Brother Yu, are you joking? Where would I find so much money to lend you? If it was a few 100 million, I could still find a way to satisfy you, but 50 billion? This is too exaggerated. Brother Du, you're being a little unreasonable." Yu Qianzhou rubbed his chin, his face filled with doubt. "Didn't you say that if I lend you a hand your father will give me 10 billion divine-grade spirit stones? You even said that money isn't a problem and can be discussed. Don't tell me it's all a lie?" Du Feng blanked for a second, then smiled wryly. "Why would I lie to you? Brother Yu, you overestimate us father and son. I already said that even if it's 10 billion divine-grade spirit stones, my father will think of a way to raise it slowly. It's impossible for him to take out 10 billion divine-grade spirit stones in a short time. It's true that my father is an elder of the spiritual cultivation sect, and it's also true that the spiritual cultivation sect is rich, but without a good reason, it's impossible to use such a large amount of public property. Not to mention you want 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones. I'm really powerless. Forget it, don't say any more, I'll think of another way." Yu Qianzhou waved his hand weakly, walking to the edge of the mountain and sitting down. He closed his eyes and fell into deep thought, his entire being listless. Just like this, the two of them stood there in a deadlock for a long time. Du Feng strolled on the top of the mountain, looking at the surrounding scenery over and over again, until he had engraved all the surrounding terrain into his mind. He felt a little uncomfortable, so he walked behind Yu Qianzhou and coughed. "Brother Yu, we can think of a way slowly, there's no rush, let's go back first." "Go back?" Yu Qianzhou raised his head and looked around, facing the mountain wind. He muttered, "Go back where? Where can I go? Is this my home? My home is in a very, very far away place, too far away. Although I've always wanted to go back, I can't even find the way home. How do you want me to go back? I'm like a migratory bird that's searching for its final home. I've been trying my best to fly, but I'm not even as good as a migratory bird. Although I've never stopped and have been trying my best to fly. But there's really no way to go back. There's no way to go back." His slightly hoarse voice was full of desolation, making Du Feng feel a little sorry for him. Du Feng didn't know why he suddenly became so sad. He opened his mouth a few times but stopped himself. In the end he couldn't help but ask, "Brother Yu, why don't I understand what you mean? Where is your home?" Yu Qianzhou suddenly came to his senses. The inexplicable sadness hidden in the deepest part of his heart was unintentionally aroused and quickly restrained. His eyes regained their clarity, he turned his head to look at Du Feng behind him and laughed. "For a cultivator, everywhere is his home. You should go back first. Damn it. I still have to think of where to get the 50 billion, I have to establish my own chamber of commerce. You should go back first." He sat there and waved his hand to signal Du Feng to go first. Du Feng shook his head speechlessly, cupped his hands and left. After watching Du Feng leave, Yu Qianzhou also stood up and stood at the peak of the mountain with his hands behind his back. His eyes glimmered as he looked at the distant horizon, thinking of a safe way to get the 50 billion. However, not long after, someone shouted from afar, "Brother Yu." Yu Qianzhou turned his head and saw a red shadow shooting towards him. Hui Yunlong's voice came and he landed in front of him. Hui Yunlong laughed, "Brother Yu, you really made me look for you, I finally found you." Yu Qianzhou was speechless. Needless to say, it must be Du Feng who leaked his location, no one else knew that he was here. Damn it. You really know how to conduct yourself. First, you took me to a remote place to ask all you wanted, then when you found out that there was no hope, you went to your cousin's place to be a good person. As Yu Qianzhou expected, after a few words, Hui Yunlong said the same thing as Du Feng. he wanted to make him an outer disciple of the mythical fire palace. Yu Qianqiu had no choice but to politely repeat his rejection of Du Feng to Hui Yunlong, causing Hui Yunlong to be unable to smile. However, Yu Qianqiu still treated Hui Yunlong differently, because he considered that after the group of people from the cultivation world came, they would definitely change the fellows who were fighting to a higher level. Moreover, in the future when he established his Chamber of Commerce, he would definitely have to deal with them frequently, so it was better to have a good relationship with the number one blacksmith sect in the celestial world. Therefore he repeatedly patted his chest and promised that if there was anything that he needed help with in the future, he would just let him know. If he could do it, he would do it. If he couldn't, he would think of ways to do it. Chapter 835. Huang Xiaolong had really grasped Hui Yunlong's pulse. A straightforward person like Hui Yunlong would never be able to withstand words like, willing to sacrifice oneself for a brother. Hui Yunlong was so moved that he nearly smacked a hole in his chest. He did not say anything else, merely telling Yu Qianqiu that if there was anything he needed help with, he would do it. Even if he couldn't, he would think of a way to help. Yu Qianqiu laughed like an old fox that had just stolen a chicken. He patted Hui Yunlong's shoulder and nodded repeatedly. Brother Yunlong's words reminded me of something. I wonder if Brother Yunlong can lend me 50 billion divine grade spirit stones. Don't worry, I'll return it to you in the shortest time possible. Hui Yunlong's smile stiffened, his eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. He swallowed with difficulty, stuttering as he asked, How much? 50 billion divine grade spirit stones? You're saying you want to borrow 50 billion divine grade spirit stones from me? AI. Yu Qianqiu sighed inwardly. From Hui Yunlong's expression, it was obvious that a single sentence from Hui Yunlong had frightened him to the point that he couldn't speak clearly. Hui Yunlong definitely wouldn't be able to take out that much money. Huang Xiaolong laughed awkwardly. It's just a joke, Brother Yunlong need not take it to heart. Hui Yunlong's expression relaxed, exhaling deeply as he rubbed his forehead. There was still lingering fear in his heart. Brother, you really gave me a fright. I thought, brother, you really wanted to borrow 50 billion divine grade spirit stones from me. You have to know that even if I were to be sold, I wouldn't be able to get that much money. You really gave me a fright. It's just a joke, don't take it seriously. Yu Qianqiu consoled Hui Yunlong out of goodwill. Subsequently, the two of them chatted about their brotherly love, and when they were done, they returned home. In the next few days, Yu Qianqiu, who was homeless in the immortal world, stayed in the mythical fire palace's shop. Every day he would try his best to build a good relationship with everyone in the shop. Of course, Huo Lianqing was his main target. Secondly, when he was free, Huang Xiaolong would stroll the streets with Hui Yunlong, asking him about matters related to the immortal world, deepening his understanding of the immortal world. Ever since the first time he went to the Four Links Chamber of Commerce to collect his 100 million divine great spirit stones commission, Huang Xiaolong had found an excuse to bring Hui Yunlong to the Four Links Chamber of Commerce's shops. Hui Yunlong was never tired of this, willing to listen to Du Feng's rotten excuses. After that, no one knew what happened, but Du Feng also went to the mythical fire palace's shop every day, using the excuse that he wanted to have fun together to hitch a ride to the Four Links Merchant Guild's shop every day. After some time, the father-daughter pair Long and Li understood what Xiaolong was doing. That Yu Qianqiu was just a foil. The two people who were always hinting at Mu Tianjiao were obviously interested in the young lady of the Mu clan. Although Mu Tianjiao accompanied them, talking and laughing, she was neither humble nor respectful, neither too close nor too far, deepening their friendship. Whenever the two of them showed any signs of wanting to do something obvious, she, a smart person, would feign ignorance. Yu Qianqiu, the giant third wheel, was watching the fun from the side. When he first decided to establish the Chamber of Commerce, he had considered whether he should make use of Mu Tianjiao and take over the Four Links Chamber of Commerce. That way he could save 50 billion divine grade spirit stones, but he gave up on the idea. If he had to establish his own Chamber of Commerce in the immortal world, then the name wouldn't be the Four Links Chamber of Commerce, but the famous Under the Heavens Trading House. Yin Baikong died in battle in order to defend against the powerful enemies of the immortal world. This was a kind of spirit, and if this spirit was brought to the immortal world, it would become a strong cohesive force, a strong centripetal force. Yu Qianqiu believed that as long as the signboard of the Under the Heavens Trading House was established in the immortal world, it would definitely give those cultivators who left their homes to fight in the immortal world a sense of belonging. They wouldn't be like him, feeling homeless. Secondly, Yin Baikong's Under the Heavens trading house had left behind a large number of business elites. Once they gathered in the immortal world, it would be the time for them to display their skills in this vast land. At that time he wouldn't need to worry about anything, he only needed to grasp the direction behind the scenes. Presumably they would also be very willing to let the Under the Heavens trading house flourish everywhere in the immortal world, especially Xikongju and Jingyuankong. This was called walking the dignified path of a king, winning over the hearts of the people. One must know that the will of the people couldn't be changed no matter how much money you had. Because of this, Yu Qianqiu decided to fork out this sum of money regardless of the cost. At the very least he would just treat it as spending money to remember Yin Baikong. He hoped that Yin Baikong was somehow aware of this, hoped that he would smile when he found out that the Under the Heavens trading house he founded had taken root in the immortal world. Thinking about it this way, Yu Qianqiu felt that this sum of money was well spent. Wan Gutong's shop in the innermost compartment. Although it was simple and crude, it didn't lose its elegance. The room was filled with the faint fragrance of a woman. The graceful Wan Ling's eyes flickered with shrewdness and experience. She raised her hand and dismissed the disciple who had finished reporting the situation. With light steps, she took out a jade archive from the shelf on the side and stroked it in her hand. Her eyes flickered as she pondered quietly. Beside her, Mu Wan, Mu Gu and Mu Tong exchanged glances. Although they bore the title of elder in reality, they didn't care about anything within the sect. They were wandering cultivators and the three Mu brothers that Wan Gutong's sect master, Wan Bushing, had saved a long time ago. In order to thank Wan Bushing for saving their lives, the three of them changed their names and followed Wan Bushing for the rest of their lives, obeying his orders. In name, the three of them were outer sect elders, but in reality their positions in the entire Wan Gutong were very high. Other than Wan Bushing, no one else had the authority or dared to order them around. Wan Ling was the only daughter of Wan Bushing's late eldest son, and was deeply doted on by Wan Bushing. Plus, she was quite capable, so Wan Bushing gave her a transcendent status. Wan Gutong's advisor could oversee the matters within the sect, but she had no authority over them. Therefore this advisor didn't have much power in Wan Gutong, but it wasn't small either. She was probably the only one among all of Wan Bushing's descendants who could directly meet Wan Bushing at any time, anywhere. No one in the entire Wan Gutong dared to not give her some face. This time, she had led a group to participate in the realm of the deity gathering on a whim. Because there were many people at the gathering, Wan Bushing was afraid that something might happen to her, so he brazenly mobilized the three Mu brothers with the highest cultivations in the outer sect to protect her. Ever since Yu Qianqiu bought 100 sets of jade archives, and came out safely from the realm of the deity, he had attracted Wan Ling's attention. Thus, she had sent people to secretly monitor Yu Qianqiu. However, other than interacting with Mythical Fire Palace, Spirit Cultivation Sect and Four Links Chamber of Commerce, Yu Qianqiu did not make any strange movements. Could it be that her suspicions were wrong? Wan Ling placed the jade archives back on the shelf, and turned to look at the three Mu brothers, asking slowly, "Don't the three elders feel that this Yu Qianqiu is suspicious?" This kid's previous actions were indeed a little suspicious, but... Mu Wan paused, then shook his head with a bitter smile. So what if he's suspicious? He has nothing to do with our Wan Gutong, he really isn't worthy of Mrs. Attention. In the entire Wan Gutong, the three brothers would only call Wan Ling Miss. That's not the way to put it. Wan Ling shook her head gently. The soft light emitted by the fluorite hanging above her reflected a hazy brilliance on her plump forehead and her straight nose, which made her beautiful and generous look even more tempting to make men want to kiss her. Wan Ling's gaze deepened as she said, "If he had spent more money on other things I might not have cared. But he just had to buy 100 sets of jade archives to bring into the realm of the deity, this can't help but make others suspicious of his actions. He actually brought so many sets of jade archives into the realm of the deity?" "Miss, stop thinking about it." Mu Tong waved his hand and said, "If Miss is worried that he will do something detrimental to our Wan Gutong, I will find a suitable opportunity to kill him and end all troubles once and for all. You don't have to worry about anything anymore." Wan Ling immediately rolled her eyes and said, "What if he's just a pawn?" Mu Tong was taken aback, then said unwillingly, "Then I will capture him and interrogate him. I don't believe I won't be able to find out who the mastermind is." "Old Third, don't talk nonsense." Mu Wan stopped him, looked at Wan Ling and said hesitantly, "Miss, are you suspecting that he has gained a lot in the realm of the deity?" Wan Ling smiled and said, "It's still the great elder who understands me, whether it's him or the person behind him, if he really has gained a lot in the realm of the deity, I can't find a reason not to get a share. What do you guys think? The eyes of the three lit up. They all knew that Wanling had been strange since she was young. If an ordinary person was targeted by her, she would probably eat them up until not even their bones were left. The three of them were already bored, and it wasn't the first time they had accompanied Wanling to do something like this. It was always quite interesting. At this time there was a faint commotion outside. They looked at each other and Wanling frowned slightly. Looking at the time, the realm of the deity will close in 1 or 2 days. It seems they should all come out. As her voice fell, the four of them flashed out of the small room at the same time, turning into streams of light and flying out of the shop. In the air above the entrance of the realm of the deity, tens of thousands of people had gathered. Pairs of eyes filled with anticipation stared at the white light in the cave. This meant that someone had already entered the passage out of the realm of the deity. When Yu Qianqiu, who was strolling on the street, saw that there was a show to watch, he immediately left Du Feng and Hui Yunlong, who had yet to react, and took up a good spot in the air. By the time Du Feng and Hui Yunlong reacted, streams of light had already blocked the front row of seats that were allowed to stay in the air above the entrance of the realm of the deity. The two of them did not have the qualifications to fight with a group of seniors for a spot, so they could only stand outside the human wall. Yu Qianqiu smiled as he stared at the entrance of the cave. He wanted to see how many people would be able to come back in one piece after such a commotion. After waiting for a while, he saw that the white light in the cave was still swallowing. He couldn't help but look to both sides, only to discover that Du Feng and Hui Yunlong were not by his side. Especially the people standing on both sides of him, they were all coldly sizing him up. Chapter 836. Yu Qianqiu immediately realized that his position was not suitable, so he stared straight at the entrance of the divine ruin realm in front of him, pretending to be oblivious to the gazes that were looking at him. However, after staring for a while, he kept feeling the wind behind his neck, and faintly smelled the fragrance of a woman's body. Damn it! What the hell? Yu Qianqiu muttered in his stomach. He held it in for a while, but found that the wind behind his neck was still blowing non-stop. That faint body fragrance was familiar. Thinking about it, other than Jiwu Immortal Monarch and Mu Tianjiao, he did not seem to know any other women in the immortal world. Moreover, this body fragrance did not match the smell of these two women. After a while, the wind behind his neck continued to blow. Yu Qianqiu finally could not bear it anymore. He suddenly turned around and was stunned. He saw Wanling covering her mouth and smiling, then hooking her slender finger at him as a greeting. That beautiful and capable appearance revealed a bit of mischievousness. Yu Qianqiu was stunned for a while, then turned around and cupped his hands, laughing, "Hee hee." No wonder this body fragrance felt familiar, so it's big sister Wanling's body fragrance. As soon as these words came out, the surrounding gazes immediately turned towards them. Everyone's gazes were filled with ambiguity and strangeness, sweeping across the man and woman, seemingly trying to find some clues. Who was Wanling? Almost everyone present knew who she was. She was the #1 merchant house in the immortal world, Sect Master Wan Bosheng's precious treasure. If anyone could chase after her, then they would not have to worry about anything in the immortal world for the rest of their lives. Countless rich young masters had pursued her, but it seemed that none of them had succeeded. Could it be that she had an affair with this brat? Actually, they could not be blamed. Yu Qianqiu's words were too ambiguous, saying that this body fragrance was familiar, so it was big sister Wanling's. Anyone who heard it would probably misunderstand. The smile on Wanling's face froze. After sensing everyone's ambiguous gazes, her entire face instantly flushed red. She gritted her teeth and shouted, "Who is your big sister? Who knows you? Damn it. Calling you sister is giving you face. Who would have thought that you're already thousands of years old? Even if I add up my 2 lifetimes, I'm not more than 100 years old." Yu Qianqiu cursed inwardly. He felt wronged, but he couldn't afford to offend him now. He squeezed out a smile and said, "How can I not know him? If I didn't know you, you wouldn't keep blowing on the back of my neck. After we broke up last time, you even gave me this. Don't you remember?" As soon as he finished speaking, he took out the Xianziki token in order to save some face for himself. He didn't want others to say that he was a dignified man who was trying to climb up a high branch. A big man still wanted to save some face. He could be suspected of anything, but he couldn't be suspected of living off a woman. While showing it to Wanling, I also wanted to show everyone that we really knew each other. Look, it really is a Zishuan token. Not bad. It can't be faked. There was an uproar in the surroundings. Everyone had reason to believe that with this kid being able to enter the Divine Ruin realm, he would at most be at the Soul Formation stage. How could a Soul Formation stage itinerant cultivator hired by the Four Links Chamber of Commerce have a Zishuan token? This was too strange. The only reason was that it could really have been given to him by Wanling. In the end, Wanling's words confirmed everyone's guess. Wanling's pretty face turned red and she shouted angrily, "You don't know what's good for you. Give it back to me." She quickly made a move and snatched back the Zishuan token she had given him. Oh. A series of ohs immediately sounded from the surroundings. Everyone seemed to have understood. Wanling herself seemed to have reacted as well. She held the Zishuan token and froze in place. The three Mu brothers looked at each other and held back their laughter. This girl had always been someone who didn't suffer losses, but this time she had met her nemesis. They were still thinking of taking advantage of this kid, but they didn't expect to be beaten up by this kid in a daze. Now they had suffered a big loss. Nemesis. The sounds of astonishment from the surroundings didn't stop. They were all trying to figure out how Yu Qianqiu and Wanling got together. Wanling quickly sobered up, and her complexion returned to normal in the blink of an eye. She inserted the Zishuan token into the lapel of Yu Qianqiu's chest and said with a smile, "Put it away. Don't mind me, I was just joking with you. Why are you still looking at me? Don't tell me there's a flower on my face?" Yu Qianqiu's head was filled with fog. He mumbled an "oh" and grabbed the Zishuan token from the lapel of his chest. Then he obediently turned around. He muttered in his stomach, "A woman's heart is truly unfathomable. Damn it, you're making a fool out of me in front of everyone. Slut, just you wait. One day I'll get back this face." He didn't know that Wanling was staring at the back of his head while gnashing her teeth in hatred. Although she had a faint smile of disapproval on her face, she was secretly biting her lips. The three Mu brothers, who knew Wanling very well, immediately felt a chill run down their spines. They cast a pitying glance at Yu Qianqiu. Just think about it, today's events would definitely spread quickly. Wanling's many suitors would definitely come one after another. Based on this brat's cultivation base, which hadn't even reached the immortal realm, he would definitely die a very, very miserable death. Even his dismembered body wouldn't be enough to fill the gaps between Wanling's suitors' teeth. The white light at the entrance of the cave suddenly rose sharply, immediately attracting everyone's attention. A woman whose face was covered in blood and her clothes were so ragged that half of her fair and tender back was exposed staggered out. Under the command of the golden-robed guard, she panicked and ran all the way to the empty space below. Someone immediately said in a low voice, "It's a female disciple from Rainbow Cloud sect." Almost at the same time, several women in fluttering cloud clothes flashed in the air and reached out to support the female disciple who had fled back in a sorry state. As soon as the female disciple saw her fellow sect master, she immediately sat on the ground and wailed, "They're all dead, they're all dead." Her cries were shrill and sharp, making people panic. A cold-faced woman with a pair of sword-like eyebrows frowned and shouted, "What are you crying for? Shameful thing, let's help her back first." Immediately, someone summoned a white robe from the storage bracelet and draped it over the crying woman. Two people worked together to help her back. The sword-like eyebrows woman had fair skin, and her face was thin as if it had been cut by an axe. She was serious in speech and manner, and her eyes were like cold stars as they swept across the crowd. Then she flashed back to her original position in the air and continued to watch as if nothing had happened. Not long after, the entrance of the Divine Ruin realm spat out a burst of white light, and more than a dozen people flew out. What was hard to believe was that these people actually fought their way out, completely ignoring the murderous gazes of the Immortal Palace guards, as if their eyes were bloodshot. "It's Wangu Tong and the Hidden Dragon Manor's people," someone exclaimed. Wanling and the rest were so shocked that their mouths could hardly close. Some of these people were indeed Wangu Tong's people, but how could they be so crazy as to fight in the Immortal Palace's forbidden area? Wu Xiong stood on the mountain peak with his hands clasped behind his back, looking down indifferently. "Those who don't leave the realm, kill." His deep voice covered the entire square, reverberating in everyone's eardrums. He didn't even give anyone a chance to wake up and brazenly gave the order to kill. At the entrance of the cave, more than a dozen Immortal Palace guards attacked in unison, and more than a dozen beams of light shot out. More than a dozen miserable screams abruptly stopped, and the dozen people in the chaotic battle instantly exploded into chunks of flesh and blood. The only disciple who reacted quickly came to his senses in time and quickly escaped the black line drawn by the Immortal Palace guards not far from the cave entrance, luckily saving his life. The death of the person behind him scared him out of his wits, causing him to fly into the air like a headless fly. Coincidentally or not, Yu Qianqiu, who was swaggering in the middle, was the first to bear the brunt of the attack. Yu Qianqiu cursed inwardly, "Why is this daddy so unlucky? I've visited the godly ruin realm's entrance twice, but 3 times I've met with such bad luck that I can't escape from. Heavens, are you messing with me? This daddy won't come here anymore, so King unlucky." He was about to dodge to the side and watch the commotion behind him, but who knew that the person who rushed over would immediately turn pale with fright when he saw him? Yu Qianqiu. Like he had seen a calamity, he quickly dodged. He saw this daddy inside. Yu Qianqiu was stunned for a moment, then several figures flashed out, joining hands to restrain that disciple. Judging from their attire, they were Wan Gu Tong's people. When that disciple in ragged clothes saw that it was his fellow disciple, a look of relief appeared on his bloodied face before his eyes rolled back and he fainted. He was quickly carried away. An uproar broke out in the air. No one knew what had happened inside to force these disciples to such a state. No matter what, there was no need to make a move in the Immortal Palace's forbidden area, right? This was too inconceivable. What exactly happened inside? Du Kairen, Huolianqing, and Yafuzi exchanged a glance. They had long since received the analysis from Du Feng, Huolianqing, and Yafuzi. Previously they still had some doubts, but now they were completely convinced. Their hearts were filled with gratification. Just this commotion alone was enough to counter the mockery and ridicule they had received behind their backs. Everyone suddenly thought of the Wan Gu Tong disciple's shout of "Yu Qianqiu" before he fainted. Why was he so afraid of Yu Qianqiu? Yu Qianqiu was just a rogue cultivator temporarily hired by a small 4-links chamber of commerce. What was there to be afraid of? Everyone's gazes fell on Yu Qianqiu's body. Right now it was no longer a matter of whether they were looking at him or not. The layers of imposing aura were like raging waves, causing Yu Qianqiu to feel as if he was walking on thin ice. He clenched his teeth and endured it. He could even feel Wan Ling's piercing gaze behind him, dissecting him like a knife, as if she wanted to see what secrets he was hiding. Yu Qianqiu deeply felt that he shouldn't have come here to watch the commotion, but he knew that Wan Ling wouldn't blame him. Thus, he started cursing in his heart again. "Bastard. If you fainted, fainted. Why are you shouting this daddy's name? This daddy doesn't even know who you are. Did I offend you?" Fortunately, this situation didn't last long, otherwise Yu Qianqiu would have run away in fear. The divine ruin realm continued to spit out white light, and groups of disciples from various sects who were either in rags, injured, badly mutilated, or had disheveled hair escaped one after another. Each and every one of them was frightened like stray dogs, or perhaps it would be more appropriate to describe them as beggars. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.